What's up, everybody? Welcome to PSI Love You XOXO episode 90. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the future class of video games. Returning to the show, the one, the only Blessing Adeoye Jr.
I like your get up, Greg.
Thank you. It's Halloween season. I don't know if you know that. Me and Janet are very excited because we are, of course, big Halloween fans around here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got my jacket behind me. My
sure, it's there, like laying on the ground, like you're embarrassed by it. You know.
No, it's just hot in here.
I mean, you know what it is? Like, a true Halloween king doesn't want to, like, you water down the actual day of Halloween. You got to ramp up to it, right? And if
you got to build
going all out
Barrett,
every single day.
Pick a side. Just pick a side, Barrett. You know what I mean?
I picked a side.
I picked a side on my side.
You know what? I've been meaning
last year when Blessing and I shared Dunktober together. Like, Blessing is my Halloween king. Janet is my Lord of Holidays. You, Greg?
Wow.
You're just a guy.
Lord of Holidays.
I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy to you, Barrett.
Garrett is doing a great job of becoming my Halloween prince, and so like, Barrett, keep it up. We can be royalty together.
Hell yeah.
What, Janet? What are you gonna offer Barrett in your holiday menagerie to try to keep him on your side?
I don't think I need to offer Barrett anything because Barrett is someone that thinks and goes with his heart, you know. And I trust Barrett to make good judgments.
Oh God,
And
ladies and gentlemen, that's the roller
that I
skate
am your king of Halloween.
game playing. Janet Garcia.
Hello. Also, I rewatched Nightmare Before Christmas yesterday, and he doesn't say it word for word, but they basically say that Jack Skellington is the king of Halloween, and I like turned to Isaiah and I was like, "Well, there we go. I don't know what we're talking about on PSI Love You. It's definitely Jack Skellington."
How is this still a conversation? It's already been done.
Like,
it's already been handled.
It's been decided. But yeah, what's up? Hello, it's Halloween,
Your
and this is my most. Thank you. I ordered this off ASOS. I never know how to say it. In like a panic. I was like, I really want like something new because spoilers later. I'll be Harley Quinn, but I was Harley Quinn last year, so it's like that's boring. So I want something like new, and I found this like on a sale, and I was like, cool. And I already had the hat, and I already had the skeleton hand on the mic, and then I went to Walgreens at midnight, and I bought candy, and I bought this purple lip stain. So if it comes off, don't at me. I just like randomly picked it, but yeah, I love. And
you have the Halloween decorations behind you, like you're
I got the after party solo cup, like we're ready to go. I love stuff that can be over the top and goofy and fun, and yeah,
I feel like me and you, Jane, I feel like we're cut from a similar cloth, unlike Greg Miller.
I do think, like, I've noticed in the very, Greg had what'd you do that poll on? Was it Games Daily? Who's the king of Halloween?
Games Daily today, where the games live chat said I was king of Halloween.
Right, and then I've seen other people post their like own polls of it, and a lot of times when Greg went, like, I feel like now I'm thinking, because Blessing's like, maybe we should just unify to overthrow Greg, and I think that's the only way to do it. Like, this is very much like we're splitting the vote.
To be fair,
like,
I've already overthrown Greg. Like, Greg has never had it. Greg has not had a chance. Over the last year, Greg never really stood a chance. But
I was surprised by the
I am inviting
result.
you, Janet. Like, we don't need to be at odds with each other because you have the Halloween situation down. Greg Miller, for some reason, wakes up every morning and he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna wear the stuff that I always wear, and people are gonna consider that Halloween." Like, you wear Ghostbusters stuff throughout the whole entire year. You know,
365, baby. Hey, it's a big day for us Ghostbusters fan, all right? It's the first work day where we're able to talk about the Ilphonic game, all right?
That's fair.
Ilphonic game, whatever. There it is.
It's a good song. It's a very
Great
good song.
You know what I mean? You can settle it if you want, Blessing. You can call me the king of Ghostbusters, and then we can just be done with this. You know what I mean? But I'm sure as soon as I say that, you're like, well, actually, I'm a big Ghostbusters fan. I love Raymond. And then you're going to go tomorrow and buy some shitty costume and come in and act like you've liked Ghostbusters.
I almost did that last year. I was at Spirit Halloween. I was staring both at a Ghostbusters costume and a Superman costume. And the Superman costume, like, everybody likes Superman. And so I was like, that's not gonna be a deep cut enough. Ghostbusters, I was like, that is so specifically Greg. Yeah. That if I got that, I might actually hurt him. And so I'm not gonna buy it because I don't want to actually hurt this man's feelings.
I would love you to do Ghostbuster with me. That was one of my favorite things we ever did at KindaFunny before you got here, when we did the Ghostbusters World Let's Play and everybody dressed up as Ghostbusters. We wandered around SF.
Man, I can't wait for when we can do that again.
A lot of
when we're
stairs
actually
that
working
day.
together
A lot of
in
stairs.
person.
There were a lot of stairs that day. Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. Then I don't want to do all that.
You don't
There's
have
a
to
lot
do
of
the
stairs.
stairs
Really,
anymore.
you're being perceived like all the time, Blessing. Like the idea of someone perceiving you in real life that's the step too far.
No, I mean it's the idea of stairs. That's a step too far. I just don't want to walk. That's a stair. When you hit like if you watch the Rocky movie, right? Like
Oh, there's
the part where
stairs
he
with
was-
an eye. I thought it was stairs like people are staring at you.
No,
Why are we all
I
going
was-
up so many
I was
stairs?
talking about literally like running up upstairs. That sounds like a tiresome thing. If people staring at me in my Ghostbusters outfit, I'm fine with that. It's the
Okay.
idea of like
You're
being
used to be
sweaty.
in the center of attention. Anytime you enter the room, heads turn. They're like, "Oh my god, who's that?" That's the future class of video
Yeah.
games. Blessing at AJ Jr.
Exactly. It's wild though because like this, I'm not wearing the blazer because it was too hot in my room. But I feel like it's chilled. It's chilled down now. So I might hold on. Let me put something on.
Yeah, I mean you should. Like this
put
is the
something on.
job. Like
God damn it! He's got something.
if
new
you
to
have
do.
to like sweat through like
He doesn't know how to put it on. Hold on, Janet. Watch it. He doesn't know how to put on this sweater. He doesn't know. He doesn't
It's
know
gonna
where the
be
front of
rough.
the sweater is. I love watching.
I
him
will
flounder.
say the most horrifying thing about a pullover sweater is that moment right there. That brief moment of vulnerability. I hate it. I
Oh,
hate
really?
it. It's that yeah. You can't see anything, especially if you're doing it in public with other people around you. It's like that's
For me,
scary.
Anybody
It's the
could
pull-off.
attack you in that brief second.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the pull off because the t-shirt's always coming up with it. You know,
Yeah.
the
pull-off
t-shirts
is rough.
always. I'm showing.
You got to do the pull down, pull up combo, and
Wait, you guys didn't see like anything,
No.
right? Okay.
No.
No, just don't take it off during the show. You know, bless.
I like though that you ask us after the fact. Like it's too late, Blessing. Like
I mean, the people are gonna see what they're gonna see. I don't mind.
that's like a whole different show than the show that we're on today.
Now here,
There we
Blessing.
go. Mhm.
Janet, we've had a lot of fun. All right. These Halloween arguments throughout the years now. All right. This joke, this bit, everybody knows I'm really the big fan of Halloween, but it doesn't matter. To put all of it aside for 1 second, Blessing, you are a handsome young man. All
Thank you, I
right. Now,
appreciate
this
it.
is a
Thank you.
fucking look right here. The polo peeking through the top. You got the nice. I love this. I love
Thank
this
you.
sweater.
Shout out to fun.com. They sent it to me. They hit me up on Twitter and they're like, "Oh, we want to send you some Halloween stuff because we know how into Halloween you are." Happens a lot. I don't know why this always happens. People just know that I like Halloween and so they send me things. So thank you, fun.com.
Enough about that. Let's stop talking about fun and instead talk about PlayStation because this is PSI Love You XOXO. Each and every Tuesday, we bring to you the PlayStation nerdy news you need to know about. If you want to hang out and talk PlayStation with us, it's super easy. You can go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Write in with your own questions. Write in with your PSN names. Write in so you can just say, hey, here's what I think about Herman Hulse. And we'll say, yeah, we agree. Also on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, you can get the show ad free. You can get the show with the exclusive post show we do each and every episode. And of course, you could just support us with a few bucks and get benefits for the Games Cast, the X Cast, everything we put up on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames later. It's all on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, except the Blessing Show, which we'll talk about in a second. It's ad free and it's usually got a post show. If you have no bucks toss our way, though, it's no big deal. youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames each and every Tuesday, 6 a.m. Of course, you could be watching live as we recorded on Mondays, but I've already told you about Patreon. You can also get on roosterteeth.com and podcast services around the globe. Housekeeping for you, like I hinted at there. The Blessing Show is back, as everybody knows. The idea for the Blessing Show is that every Thursday, the first Thursday of every month, every first Thursday is where I was originally going, and I pulled
Yes.
up and I screwed it up. Every first Thursday, there's a new episode of the Blessing Show that goes live, and it's a YouTube premiere where you're in the comments talking to people as it happens. What are we getting this Thursday?
Oh, I don't want to ruin it. I think the only clue I'm going to give is that it's a very loopy episode. That's all I'm going to say.
Definitely.
But it's also a very, very good one. It's one that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy. If you've been keeping up with the games of this year, you're not going to be surprised when you actually see the headline. You're like, oh, all right, that's good. It's going to encompass a lot of the games that you've enjoyed that have come out this year. I guess that's the thing I'll say. But it's a loopy one. That's all I'm going to say.
That's Thursday, youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. You can get it 8 a.m. Pacific. Is that right?
That's a good question. I think
Check
it might
the
be
counter.
7 a.m.
I'm 90% sure on that, but it's not in actual notes here. The other note is, of course,
8
this
a.m.
post 8 a.m. This post Tuesday. If you are listening to it as we go live at 6 a.m., thank you for being here early. We love and appreciate you. Remember, today, Andy and Bless are taking part in Panda's All-Star Nickvitational. It's a huge Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl tournament featuring a bunch of big YouTubers and streamers like Avali, Moist Critical, which is a gross name, Ludwig, and more. It's to raise money for the charity, the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. You can still donate, kindafunny.com/bless, kindafunny.com/Andy. I assume, of course, after the fact, even they can still donate, right, Bless? Even if they missed.
Oh
this
yeah,
live,
you
wanna
can
catch
just,
the
I'm sure
archive.
they won't cut it off at any point. So you can go in, donate. Of course, the money goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. And the way that it works works too is if you donate before or during the actual event, me and Andy then get to use that currency to then bid on the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl character that we want to use. And so I've been talking about how I want to use Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender because Toph was just announced as the final character being included in the game over the weekend. And so either Toph or like maybe Aang, maybe SpongeBob. Tonight I might go through because the game unlocks tonight, so I'm probably gonna go in there and check out the different characters to see ideally who I work best with. I hope that is Toph because Toph is my favorite character out of or one of my favorite characters out of the bunch. But yeah, if you donate the money, it then gets converted into fake currency, meaning to use that fake currency, bid an auction to get the character that we want to use. It's a good time. Everybody go over there. KindaFunny.com/bless.
And then you can catch it, of course, twitch.tv/Panda Global Tuesday at noon Pacific. Again, if you're watching or listening later, I'm sure it is up on Panda Official or Panda Global, right? Twitch.tv, Panda Global. You can find it. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. It's out there. Blessing will tweet about it. You'll find it over there. And then one final piece, of course, PS I Love You XOXO. Wouldn't be PS I Love You XOXO without the boss baby, Sad Boy Barrett on the 1s and 2s, and the first episode of the Arkham Files, a KindaFunny Games mini-series where Barrett looks back at what makes each of the Batman Arkham games so special, premieres on Monday, October 11th on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames at 2:30 p.m. Pacific. Join Barrett in the live chat and talk with him about why Arkham Asylum is still a master class in design. Barrett, how excited are you?
I'm very excited. Roger has been editing these episodes because I wanted to have it have this series kind of have a higher class of editing for the final product.
Sure.
I edited both Zelda in review and Assassin's Creed in review, both a little more basic in the concept of like what you're looking at visually. So yeah, I teamed up with Roger on this one, 4 episodes, each episode tackling one of the main Batman Arkham games. Very excited. I've seen the final cuts for the first 2 episodes, and I'm really proud of what Roger and I have put together here. I think I tweeted out last week of like, these are probably the best videos I've ever worked on personally.
Wow.
In a production standpoint of just, of course, with 90% of that being because Roger's very good at what he does video editing wise, and 10% of that is I feel really good about these scripts. I'm not naturally like a writer super often, but I'm really proud of what we're putting together. So yeah. Monday the 11th, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. That'll also be a YouTube premiere, and you can come hang out. I'll be in the chat chatting with y'all, and we can talk about Arkham Asylum.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it. Ladies and gentlemen, you, of course, should be fantastic yourself. Go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Be a Patreon producer like Pranksy, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, Techie Haas, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. But that's enough about them for now. Let's start this episode of PS I Love You XOXO with topic of the show. So it's a spoiler to a bit, right, guys? Because we do this show weekly. A lot of PlayStation news happens. Sometimes a lot, sometimes not that much. This past week's been huge. And what's been happening, of course, is that PlayStation Studios is blowing up over there. They're adding more people. It's been a big year for PlayStation Studios already. Correct, Janet?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Blessing, I'm not here to step on your toes, all right? I'm not here. I've looked ahead at PlayStation updates. All right. I've seen PlayStation updates. What comes after topic of the show, right? And I know we're talking about the growth. So before we talk about the future, I want to talk about the present and a bit of the past. All right. Here we are, October 4th, 2021. The year is winding down. I think on KindaFunny Games Daily today, Bless, you talked about, hey man, game of the year kind of solidifying, right? Like what are the other big games that are still on your radar that might actually be in the running? You're having a conversation with Tim about it, right? You said a whole bunch of stuff about Halo, which I found very disturbing for somebody on a PlayStation podcast, but we won't talk about it right now.
I mean, I didn't say it was going to be mine. I just threw it out there.
You said you were going to be pretty into it. I'm just putting that out there.
I'm gonna play Halo, but like, come on,
it's not how you made it sound like you're gonna play a lot of it, all right? And I don't remember you saying, "Hey, let's play a lot of Killzone Liberation." You know what I mean? You didn't say that.
That's a good point. I did not say that. You're right. You're exactly
right. So on top of that, this might be my final PS I Love You XOXO of the year with this baby's or expected due date, the 7th, this Thursday. We'll see what day actually hits. So you start to look back, and so I figured I want to talk about 2022. I want to talk about the future of PlayStation Studios and where they're going. But what I really want to talk about right now is for 2021, what PlayStation Studio was the MVP? What was the PlayStation Studios 2021 MVP? And then I do want to talk about predictions for what PlayStation Studio will be the MVP in 2022. Janet Garcia, you have the best costume today, so we'll turn to you.
Ooh.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think MVP is going to be? For your 2021, who is the PlayStation Studios MVP? And of course, if you're new, the PlayStation Studios we're talking about, of course, the Sony owned and operated studios making games for PlayStation.
Yeah, glancing at this list where you kind of collected like what's going on with who and like when the last games came out, I think I'm gonna say Insomniac because Ratchet came out this year. I think that might be the biggest PlayStation thing that really came out this year, I would say. And then they had that huge splash at the showcase where I'm like, Insomniac's carrying this team. Now, I don't think you get like, massive points for like just announcing that like you're gonna put out other stuff, but I feel like that combination of announcing and releasing and having just released, I feel like they're kind of firing on all cylinders in that regard, where like they're consistently and constantly putting out high quality content. So for me, that would be my pick.
I feel like you can toss Miles in there, right? A PlayStation 5 launch game. I know we're talking about it for 2021 as high presented, who's this year's MVP. But for a launch game right there, right before, I mean, we're not even a year out right from it yet. We're still coming up on that. Like, you can't look past what Insomniac's done, right? What they did in this first year of the PlayStation 5 life cycle, let alone now what they're promising and how they're doubling down and delivering.
And with how hard it's been to get new consoles and stuff, like a lot of people probably played Miles for the first time this year as well, right?
Sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Blessing at a you, at a yo, at a you, at a yo,
at me. Yeah, this is an interesting question.
At a you, at a me, at a who.
This is an interesting one because I think it depends on how you frame it and present it. Because I think the easy answer is Insomniac. I think Insomniac, when you look at the biggest games on PlayStation of 2021, right? Like Ratchet and Clank, I think is the immediate go-to. I think Deathloop is another go-to, but Deathloop we don't count as PlayStation Studios because PlayStation is not publishing that game. And so Ratchet and Clank is the easy go-to, especially when you bring in something like Miles Morales and then releasing that game at the start of the console generation last November. Insomniac has been on a roll recently in terms of those back-to-back hits, and then also announcing what their future is, announcing Wolverine, announcing Spider-Man 2. And so like with all that, it's hard to not say Insomniac, but I would put out a few arguments in terms of, I guess, different ways you could look at
Wait,
MVP.
no, get off the fence first. So are you picking Insomniac? Is that who you're awarding your MVP to?
Well, I want to have a dialogue because like
I do too, motherfucker. That's why I'm saying choose something. Don't eat up all the oxygen.
I want to know how you guys like what you guys' standard for MVP are, because I also go to Housemarque because obviously Returnal came out this year, and I think Returnal for me is one of my games of the year, right? Like I don't necessarily have a definitive, even though I think more and more that Deathloop is probably going to run away with it. Returnal is in the conversation for me in terms of being my favorite video game that's come out in 2021. And I think part of that is, of course, the gameplay is solid because it's Housemarque. Housemarque knows what they're doing in terms of making a good arcade style experience. They know how to make a good shooter. They know how to, they know particle effects. They know how to make something look good. And Returnal is, I think, the biggest step they've had as a studio in terms of, hey, we're going from what we used to be to being something brand new and something that is fresh and something that is operating at a way bigger level in scale. And so for the fact that they did that, and then also were brought into PlayStation Studios proper, right? Because if you remember, Returnal was put out as something that, at the time Housemarque was independent and they put out Returnal under PlayStation, and now they are part of PlayStation Studios proper. That is a big journey, or a big step in their journey that they've taken. That's only been over the course of the last 10 months. And so when you look at that and compare it to something like Insomniac, where Insomniac has been firing on all cylinders, but they've already been firing on all cylinders for the last few games. Returnal or Housemarque has had the biggest step of any PlayStation Studios studio, I would say. And so with that, I might make the argument that for me, it might be Housemarque, but I think that also comes back to how much do we take announcements into play? How much do we take future into play? How much do we take something like Fire Sprite, which hasn't put out any games, but has one was bought by PlayStation and has already seen huge growth and is possibly showing huge potential. How do we take Bluepoint into play, which put out Demon Souls at the end of last year and got
superfluous? We're not counting them. They've done nothing in 2021. You think they're the most valuable player? They just got bought this week.
They got bought, which is a huge step for them, right?
That's PlayStation updates. You saved. You put that in your cap for 2022. All right. I think you're on. I appreciate your argument here, right? Because I think, you said earlier, like, how do you define MVP? And of course, I define it as most valuable player. And so who is the most valuable player of 2021? And that's where it gets interesting of how do you want to do it. Yeah, Ratchet, obviously a fantastic game, and Insomniac, obviously a fantastic studio. I feel like all we do on this show is talk about how great they are. And especially in 2020, how great Miles was, how great the remaster of Spider-Man was, then to jump ahead to, looking to 2023, or if you want to just the announcements, having Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine announced this year, huge. However, like you bring up, Housemarque in Returnal. If we're just going off of this year, okay, Housemarque didn't announce stuff, but did the announcements move the needle for you? Maybe they don't for you personally, but do they as the PlayStation Studios MVP? What one stands out there? And then even there, I would add into the fight to have an argument, right? To have a conversation, to mix it up here. I would still put Naughty Dog on that list. Where, yeah, guess what? Naughty Dog didn't put out They put out Last of Us Part 2.
After that weekday, I don't know. It's too soon from the
But
last
everyone's still
day.
gobbling that information up, right? So, like, here's what I'm saying is if we want to talk about MVP and you want to talk about, like, what this actually means, is it literally a participation award that you're like, hey, great job, you had the best game this year, you're the MVP for this year? Or is it, this is the studio I would not trade ever, this is the most valuable player on the team?
Because it's per year, I would argue that it's based on this year alone, like who brought the most value to PlayStation this year. And I do think there is an argument for Housemarque because, like, and I actually don't know where you guys stand on this. Returnal, better than Ratchet and Clank?
Oh, for me, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I honestly didn't spend enough time with Returnal, and I'm finally getting back to Ratchet and Clank. I put in some hours this past Saturday. And that's probably true. So I think that's the best argument, really. Like, if, game to game, a lot of people would pick Returnal over Ratchet and Clank in terms of quality. I do think Ratchet and Clank, though, has a way more massive reach, and that's also the reason that I didn't play more Returnal. Like, I can appreciate what it's doing, but it is kind of in a more niche and brutal genre to actually, like, get through it. So I think based on the reach, I would then still toss it to Insomniac because more people, Ratchet's moving the needle more for PlayStation than Returnal is. Returnal's still cool, and it's like maybe has more artistic value, but I think business-wise, Ratchet would still win there. But that's why I would say it's based on this year, because MVP for this year. It's not who we did the trade conversation already. It's not who do you love the most, who's going to bring the most like it's who was the most valuable this year.
Mm-hmm. And so then the question becomes for valuable though, like for this year, and like again, we're arguing here. We're having devil's advocate stuff, right? I have not revealed who I'm voting for. Janet's at a loss because she already put it out there. We know. All right, she's in the tank for.
I'm always at a loss. I often find myself at a loss on the show.
For Naughty Dog, right? The argument would be like what they've done this year. Like are you going to count the fact that the Last of Us IP
that statue they put out?
The statue, count the Last of Us IP being turned into an HBO show. The fervor behind that, the Uncharted movie being turned into a movie, all these things. Like, again, I'm not.
I also got the Uncharted Lost Legacy or Legacy Collect, whatever that thing's called. The Uncharted Lost Legacy.
Yeah, what a Legacy of
which
Thieves.
Clearly made an impact because we all can remember what that's called.
It's really hanging in there, whatever, right? But do you like that stable of IP and what they're using with it right there matter? And then, of course, if we're talking about announcements, obviously Spider-Man 2 and Logan are more exciting than hey, we're still working on a multiplayer game and you'll hear about it one day. But it's still there, right? That still serves an audience.
That's the tough place I find myself in between, I guess, Insomniac and Housemarque, because I think, Jenny, you make the good point that Ratchet just has bigger reach because it is Ratchet and it is an already established IP. People know what it is and people are excited about it because it's one of the biggest releases of the PS5 over the last year. The thing I'll say toward Returnal, though, is if we're talking about value, right, in the conversation of most valuable player, Housemarque went from having the value of something that is a Resogun or that is a Nex Machina to having something that is of the value of a Returnal, which is a big jump. I'm sure for PlayStation Studios, they look at that growth and evolution and go, oh, for us, that is just as valuable as Ratchet continuing to kill it, but Ratchet and Insomniac have already, like, they've already been killing it, right? Like, we knew Ratchet was going to blow up. We knew Ratchet was going to be dope. Before Returnal came out, I think all of us were counting it out. Like, if I remember correctly, none of us were really that excited for Returnal.
It was the one we kept saying we have to play this. Like, they keep showing stuff and having kind of boring presentations about it. Like, what does it actually feel like?
Yeah, and now that Returnal has come out and is a hit, and now that PlayStation has bought Housemarque, that is now another feather in their cap. That is, okay, cool. We have games like Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, and Returnal. Like Ratchet and Clank was already Ratchet and Clank. The fact that they have a new IP that, of course, like it's not selling as much as a Spider-Man Miles Morales or selling as much as a one like the top sellers of PlayStation Studios. It is still something, both I guess in regards to the IP of Returnal and more so in regards to the studio of Housemarque. They are now of that echelon, and now whenever Housemarque reveals their next game, we're gonna look forward to it as a PlayStation Studios game in a way where we kind of already had that with Insomniac and with Naughty Dog. You want to count Naughty Dog in this conversation, but it's also tough because, of course, the thing you have to keep coming back with Insomniac is the fact that they released 2 games in the last year, and also they've announced 2 more games for the PS5. Like, if you're talking about MVP, somebody who you wouldn't trade away, somebody who is like performing right now consistently and performing the best, I might have to give it to Insomniac. Like, I might, as much as I want to make the argument for Housemarque because I love them and like I love their kind of games and I love what they do and they've had so much growth. Insomniac is just like, in terms of MVP, I think that is them. I think they are the most valuable player right now.
I mean, it's the obvious choice and a boring choice, but it's because it's very true to me. I think too, with like the argument of like Ratchet is sort of a known quantity. I mean, I think that's true to a degree. And the thing I dislike the most about Ratchet and Clank so far from what I've played is I just feel like it's not innovating enough for what the franchise needs, in my opinion. Funny enough, people always like forget that I played all the old games. Like, I love Ratchet and Clank. I am a Ratchet and Clank fan. I think if I wasn't a longtime fan, I would have been a lot more impressed by this game. I think coming in, having like a different standard that I wanted to hit sort of, would color my perception of the game. But I do think this is the first like proper entry in a while, because they had like the Ratchet and Clank sort of redone of the first game. And that was not really, it wasn't really like continuing the franchise. So to me, like, the release of Ratchet and Clank is sort of solidifying that, hey, this is an IP we are going to continue with. We're continuing the storylines, and like we're going to continue to try to innovate on it. I think Miles does the same thing in the Spider-Man universe, Spider-Man 2, and then Wolverine says, hey, okay, we're not just gonna, what to expect from us, but here's what you didn't know to expect from us, and check out what this surprise we have in store. I think Housemarque would win a lot of fake awards we could come up with, right? Like most improved, most impressive, best game, maybe even from PlayStation, as far as exclusives.
The way I would break it down is Rookie of the Year, right? If we're going to stick with this sports terminology, right? If you're talking about MVP, is that going to be Insomniac? Is it going to be Housemarque? Then I would say you pivot and go, no, Housemarque is Rookie of the Year, right? This is a great, which is a complete insult to a studio that's been around forever. But in terms of first party.
Yeah, they are PlayStation Studios Rookie, right? Like when you look at the newly acquired Bluepoint, Housemarque, and Nixxes, and I don't know why I keep bringing up Nixxes, but like all these.
Because they worked on Avengers, you might remember them from Marvel's Avengers.
Oh man, so I'm taking them off that list.
Who could forget?
Yeah, we got to make Greg answer the question because now both me and Janet have answered, and Greg was hounding me for my answer. Greg, what is your definitive answer? Who is your MVP?
Before I get there, I want to toss out that in the live chat, of course, on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, where you can watch us record the show live. Joshy G says, Janet hit it. This was my first real Ratchet game, and I loved it. And I'm in the same camp of Janet, I think, where I by no means am a Ratchet, super fan, but I did play a bunch of them. And then some, as the years have gone on, I usually start them and drop off of them. Right. And so jumping back into this one, I felt it was a great job of being a fun, beautiful, impressive game, but it did feel like Ratchet, right? And it did feel like when I got to the end, like I've talked about a few times, I was disappointed with it not being like this,
pushing the needle.
Yeah, exactly. This is a modern Ratchet, which is awesome, and Ratchet is great, but I'm not walking away going, fuck, I can't wait for the next one. I was like, that was really good, and I had a lot of fun, and I don't know if I'd be as excited for the next one after so much time off.
I think that's a good point. Like, Jan, as you were saying that, I was feeling that as well, because we had just done the PSLV review of Ratchet and Clank 2016 before Rift Apart came out as a way to kind of gear us up for the release of Rift Apart. Part of me wishes that we hadn't done that, because coming off of Ratchet and Clank 2016, I already love that game, right? And like playing it again, I still love that game, but I started to see some of the flaws a little bit more. But I also had seen like, okay, yeah, this is what this gameplay loop is. This is, they kind of have their standards for the kind of weapons that you're going to get out of a Ratchet and Clank game. And it was a good reminder of what Ratchet and Clank is. And playing Rift Apart, I felt so much of, oh, okay, the topiary sprinkler is just another form of the dance weapon. Oh, this weapon is just another grenade launcher. Oh, this is just another that. Like, there's so many comparisons I could make to, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is the most refined, polished, best looking Ratchet and Clank game. It is the natural progression for what Ratchet and Clank is as a something that wants to have a cinematic, beautiful, polished presentation, something that's trying to be Pixar adjacent. But in terms of gameplay and in terms of the construction of Ratchet and Clank, like Ratchet and Clank is what Ratchet and Clank is, and I think that for me made me less excited coming out of Rift Apart, because I was like, oh yeah, I know what this game is. I've played this game before, and this is a fantastic one of those, but it doesn't separate it from being one of those still. Where, you know, when I think of the games that I love or the games that excite me, usually it's new shit, usually it's stuff that I haven't experienced before. And so Returnal struck me as something that felt brand new and fresh to me. And like even Deathloop, even though we're not including it in this conversation per se, as games of the year, Deathloop was another thing that spoke to me as, oh, this is fresh, this is different. Like I'm interacting with this thing in a way that feels new. And so I definitely understand anybody who comes into Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart as maybe their first Ratchet and Clank game and go, oh, this is easily my game of the year, because it is game of the year quality in terms of what it is, but it's going to speak to different people differently.
Do we have, I'm trying to figure out if you're live chatting, please feel free to shout it out in the chat there. Have they given off sales figures ever for Ratchet and Rift of what it actually is? I have one that was like 1.1 million sold for already. Like it wasn't like
I'm on it, Greg.
Thank you very much. It wasn't all the way gone, because that's, you know,
I remember Returnal's numbers coming out and it being like,
yeah, and it's that was 500,000, right?
Yeah,
they do for 500,000. They announced that, and it's always they announce these milestones, right? They don't always necessarily go into it. Yeah, July 29th, The Gamer responded. The Gamer had an article. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart has already sold more than 1 million copies, 1.1 million as of July 29th, 2021. And so I wonder where that shakes out, because again, you're trying to pin me down. I'm still trying to define what is an MVP. Blessing out of you.
Answer the question.
I don't know if you know
you're
this.
like, how do we define the question I asked? What?
Hey, no, all right? You came out of the gates.
You're like, I don't know, man. Like it could be anything.
What Greg's trying to do right now, and the gears are turning. He's trying to figure out how to make a more interesting answer, because both of us have answered Insomniac, and it's the easy and obvious answer. He doesn't want to give that answer.
He wants to say
Naughty Dog.
What's the number 2 MVP?
Really, what's yours?
Really quick,
that
is the most recent public sales figure.
So then you got, if you want to, I mean, we're talking about, you know, we're defining MVP. Do we talk about Sony San Diego, right? I would assume that's
exactly.
I would assume that this is now the game. I have an article here from Gaming
thing.
Bolt, July 28th. MLB The Show Cross is 4 million players. Of course, that's with the Xbox things, but that's actual value, right? That's got to be value to Sony's portfolio and everything else. Here's what it comes down to, Blessing.
I mean, the argument I would make: do they lose value as a PlayStation studio because
it's not Xbox?
They are, they're putting their games out on other platforms, and that's very obviously something that they don't want to do.
We define the MVP, all right, of what a PlayStation Studios would be. There'd be many ways to argue it, Blessing. So maybe it isn't about, like, you know, are we saying what a PlayStation Studios? Are we arguing with PlayStation? Because obviously their bottom line.
I'm surprised none of y'all brought up Sucker Punch. Like, I wasn't going to mention it because y'all know I don't like vibe with ghosts like that, but I figured that might get thrown in there because of the DLC, the expansion.
Sucker Punch is always a phenomenal studio. Ghost of Tsushima, phenomenal game, and Director's Cut and Iki Island, all phenomenal. We already know Blessing loves Legends and everything else, but Sucker Punch is still trying to get up that ladder. I feel like, you know what I mean? When we have these conversations, not even just for the MVP of the year, because again, a year with a Director's Cut, cool. You have the big, you know, expansion. There's more Legend stuff, right? That's all great, well and good, but I don't think it's like really blowing up the spot, right? I always said for Ghost of Tsushima in 2020, right, that was for a lot of people. I think, hey man, this Sucker Punch place is pretty cool, and they had missed the Infamous series pretty much entirely. And so I still think that maybe it's the next game, or the next Ghost that they do, that'll be one that goes bam, like holy shit, like this is something we all got to pay attention to. It's a similar thing I've talked about with Insomniac, where I think, you know, for Spider-Man, getting them paired up with that was such a monumental, you know, jet fuel on a fire kind of thing, where again, I'm not trying to take pop shots at Ratchet here. We know Ratchet's great. Ratchet has a fan base, but Ratchet was also old, and that's hard to get people excited for in a lot of different ways. And so to have them break out with Spider-Man, so that's why I didn't bring up Sucker Punch for this argument for MVP of this year particularly.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I think of MVP, I think of who blew me away. And Director's Cut didn't really blow me away for Ghost of Tsushima. For me, it was very much this is solid. Like they're continuing to kill it. They're continuing to do a good job. But I think if it was and this is asking too much, but if it was the 15-hour DLC campaign that we were reading rumors of, or like that we were like theorizing and all this stuff, if it felt substantial in a way where we were like, how the fuck did they pull this off, then I think it'd be another thing. And I think if you're asking me the 2020 PlayStation Studios MVP, sure, I for sure would make the argument for Sucker Punch. But I think in 2021, Iki Island and the new Legends content and all the stuff they're adding in the director's cut, I think was awesome, but not necessarily as impressive to me as what Insomniac did this year, or as impressive as what Housemarque did this year.
So what now? You said blessing. I'm sorry, sir. I'll answer your question when I get to it, but you just keep saying too many interesting things. So are you confirming Housemarque is because you just said it was the studio that blew you away, the game that blew you away is how you said you just defined PlayStation Studios MVP.
Well, no, I'd say Insomniac is still my answer, because Insomniac did blow me away from both like Rift Apart being as good as it was, and then Spider-Man Miles Morales. I know that's that keeps saying in 2020 game, but I feel like that does bleed in a little bit to how impressive like the output of that studio is, and also with the announcements of the new games and like the argument of like if you're gonna trade somebody away, you would never trade away an Insomniac at this point. I still got to stick with Insomniac. Housemarque would probably be a close second to me though.
So as far as my answer and my definitive thing, all right, ladies and gentlemen, you are on some kind of goddamn drug if you don't pick Insomniac. All right, like, are you kidding me? Like, you kidding me right now? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Housemarque, fuck yeah, Returnal's such a phenomenal game, so amazing. But again, and we're cheating a bit with the thing, but we're making up as we go, right? To think about what they did for PlayStation 5's launch with Miles, and then to come in and have Ratchet, and then on top of that, be able to blow us away here at the end of the year and say, and we have Spider-Man 2, and we have Wolverine coming. Like, yeah. Some of that's, I guess the majority of it, right, is talk on both ends of the year that don't actually affect the year. But in terms of MVP and like the studio that's bringing the most eyes to PlayStation, and, the thing that's making you go, well, fuck, I would never trade in my PlayStation 5 for an Xbox, or fuck, I need a PlayStation 5 so desperately badly right now. You're talking about Insomniac games. And I don't see that slowing down. I don't see that changing, right? I see Insomniac has come in and hit this stride, you know what I mean? Just that's this unbelievable string of games right now. And, maybe Spider-Man 2, maybe Wolverine don't deliver, which I doubt, but maybe they don't hit the mark we anticipate for them. But that said, like, those are still like games I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait for. And this has been the conversation too, throughout these shows, recently talking about all of this of like, I love a big AAA game, and I love the pomp and circumstance and waiting for stuff, but I also love great games quicker. And so if it is going to be that I can get a giant Spider-Man game and then get a Miles Morales and then get a giant Spider-Man game and then a Miles Morales, or, as I was getting, I think it was Janet and me the other day, whoever it was on Games Daily, getting tempted with Spider-Gwen or whatever, where it's like that, maybe that's the next interstitial game. Like, oh my fucking God, yes, please put that out. Like, I'd love to see Insomniac keep that cadence and be like, hey, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel every time. We are trying to tell you comic book stories in a comic book fashion. Usually it's comic books come serialized once a month. We're obviously not able to hit that cadence, but we are able to give
That'd be crazy.
Fucking sign me up, right? But like, that's impossible, obviously. Or it would actually get really shitty, where it would be like you're getting 20 minutes of new gameplay every time. But like stuff like Insomniac's on such another level right now and hitting on all cylinders, and every other, hackneyed cliche you could toss on them, but like, it's all eyes on them. Like, I love what they're doing and can't wait to play more of their stuff.
Congratulations, Insomniac.
Congratulations, Insomniac. You are the PlayStation Studios 2021 MVP. Round of applause, everybody. This podcast is brought to you by Purple. Sometimes it can feel like the world is against you getting a good night's sleep. There's already tons of things to be anxious about, and then there's the heat thanks to climate change. But when you have a Purple mattress, ladies and gentlemen, you can sleep cool and comfortable no matter what the world throws at you. That's because only Purple mattress has the grid. It's a unique ventilated design that lets air flow through it, which helps you sleep cool even when it's not cool, when it's been super hot, like it's been hot this summer. Joey and Tim Geddes use that there Purple. Joey's got the mattress, she loves it. Tim's got the pillow, he loves it. Both say that it's cool, it keeps them comfortable, and it's perfect for when you want to go to bed. Ladies and gentlemen, Purple is comfort reinvented right now. You'll get 10% off any order of $200 or more when you go to purple.com/kindafunny10 and use the promo code kindafunny10. That's purple.com/kindafunny10, promo code kindafunny10 for 10% off any order of $200 or more. Purple.com/kindafunny10, the promo code kindafunny10, terms apply. But that's not enough. It's time to look to 2022 and make predictions on who the MVP for 2022 will be. Blessing, This is where we dovetail with PlayStation updates. So give me the top of PlayStation updates, get me through the new additions to the family, and then let's talk about 2022.
So it's rare that we actually have a topic within PlayStation updates, or I guess a thread that's being told through PlayStation updates. But this week we do, and that thread is that PlayStation Studios is growing. I have 4 different exhibits for you, Greg, that are going to take a look at and give it as example of PlayStation Studios growth.
Janet, are
in the
you
last
as
week.
offended as I am that he just leaves you on the bench like that? Right? He's got 4 different examples for you, Greg.
You introduced me as the
Janet,
host.
go get a cup of coffee, I guess. You know what I mean? God, this is the kind of King of Halloween you people want? Oof, I don't know.
It is what it is. I like that you're getting your final shots in, though, before you, like, disappear into the sun. Yeah.
I want you to know, like, I had the moment of being at Spirit Halloween and being like, fuck, how much money do I want to spend on costumes when I might not even make it to the PS I Love You on Monday.
You can still, like, you can just tweet out the picture of the costume. You know, we'll pull it up during the show.
Sure.
Let's start with Exhibit A. Sony finally put the ring on Bluepoint. I'm going to pull from Jonathan Dornbush at IGN, who writes an article. PlayStation officially acquires Bluepoint Games. Next game planned to be an original, not a remake. Sony Interactive Entertainment has announced yet another studio acquisition. Bluepoint Games, the developers of the Shadow of the Colossus remake on PS4, and most recently the PS5 remake of Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls was only released last November, and while Bluepoint isn't officially announcing its next game, Thrush explained that the studio is aiming to work on original content going forward. No exact details about what the original content Bluepoint is working on will be, so it remains unclear if it is a new game that is part of an existing IP or something new entirely. Coming off of that, Shinobi on Twitter tweeted out, actually right before this podcast, there's a page on Bluepoint Games website for their job page, and in one of the job descriptions they say, quote, Bluepoint Games has begun the exciting work of original development and seeks passionate, industry-leading talent to join our pursuit in crafting Game of the Year quality titles. That is via the website, which is exciting and very interesting, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But again, coming off of all of that, they mentioned aiming to work on the original content. One of the things we've been talking about with Bluepoint for a while is, what are they working on? Are they working on a Metal Gear Solid remake? And if you still have any hope that they might still be working on a Metal Gear Solid remake, despite them saying they're working on original content, last week it was reported that, or from VGC at Andy Robson at VGC, that Konami is set to ramp up its premium game development with installments and remakes for its biggest titles, including Metal Gear and Castlevania. He continues in the article to say, the first of these titles will be a new Castlevania game, which sources described as a reimagining of the series currently in development internally at Konami in Japan, with support from local external studios. There's been much speculation that Demon's Souls studio Bluepoint could be working on a remake of Metal Gear Solid. However, VGC was told that the series is actually being worked on by an external studio, Virtuos. And so, exciting news regarding Metal Gear possibly coming back in any form, but a little bit of sad news that Bluepoint isn't working.
But also, hold on one second. Please give yourself a pat on the back for the tweet you had about Metal Gear Solid 3.
Oh, what was it? The Virtuous. What you're saying is that this is Virtuous Mission or Virtuous Mission?
Yeah. That was a dynamite Metal Gear lore cut. I love that one.
Thank you. But yeah, so regarding PlayStation Studios growing, like where are we at with Bluepoint finally being announced as part of PlayStation Studios after months ago them PlayStation, I think Japan already leaking it. So like, 1, where are we at with that? 2, where are we at with original content? And 3, I guess we'll get to Metal Gear in a second. We can put Metal Gear on the shelf for now. Metal Gear.
Over on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, you can write in to be part of the show. And Nika Ash wrote it and said, what does Bluepoint's transition to original games mean? And that's the $1 million question, right? I would think personally, like, it's a double-edged sword and it's positive and negative. Or I guess it's more exciting and disappointing in different variations, right? Where I think when we were entertaining the idea of Bluepoint, redoing Metal Gear, you're like, fuck yes, oh my God, please give it to me. I would love to see that. I would love to be there. And then for it to be revealed that they are a PlayStation studio, not officially, but it isn't a Metal Gear thing, right? They are working on, as they talk about, an original concept, right? It was from an IGN interview. Our next project, we're working on original content right now. We can't talk about what that is, but that's the next step in the evolution for us. There's that. That's always more original content is always so much more hard to get excited for. when you say Bluepoint, talented, amazing studio, is working on the Metal Gear, you're like, holy fucking shit, yes. It's similar to like Insomniac, incredibly talented studio, is making Spider-Man. Holy fucking shit. Bluepoint, incredibly talented studio, is making something new. And you're like, all right, cool. Can't wait to see it. I guess that's rad. You know what I mean? And like, I think that's the right call. I think that's the right push. I think you don't want your studio's identity to be, we can only play with other people's toys. That's hard to bring in people for longevity's sake, from what I understand. Again, I'm not somebody who's ever made video games, but I'm lucky enough to talk to a lot of people who do, and a lot of people who leave and move to different companies. And it does become that idea of, well, I didn't want to make this game for the next. We just saw it with Corey, right? In Santa Monica. God of War isn't a trilogy because we don't want to make that game for 15 years, man. That's a long time to do something like that. And so it's the same thing of like, cool, maybe you could come on to, work on Demon Souls. That was, you wanted to come on, you wanted to work at Bluepoint, you wanted to be a part of that. And then the next game they announce is another game they're remaking, but you're like, oh, I don't care about that game. That's a hard studio identity to have. That's a hard thing to push and pull on. And if you want to go be a creative type, for years, it feels like since I was at IGN, we talked about Bluepoint going off on their own and maybe working on something original. And what would that be? And so I think it's exciting to have PlayStation's backing there. I think it's awesome to have that, level of support so you can do that and you can flourish. And again, back to what Herman and, Sean before him and PlayStation Studios in general have built is they have an identity. So even though we sit here and we go, oh man, new IP, it could be anything. That's cool. What does it mean? I would imagine it's going to be a third-person narrative action game, right? And that gets me super fucking hyped because that's my kind of game. That's what I love. And I say that not only because, of course, that's what PlayStation's hitting on with things like Ghost, things like Horizon, things with Last of Us. Also because that's what Bluepoint's been good at, right? When you look at something like Demon Souls, when you look at something like the Metal Gear collection they had done a long time ago, but they had done, right? Like, those are the kind of genres you're existing in. So you'd want to play to those strengths. And I'm sure they have ideas and things they'd love to do there. And so we can sit here and be like, oh man, I wish Housemarque would have made, I don't know, a fucking Spy Kids game. But like, I'm glad they made Returnal, but maybe I wouldn't have been super stoked for Returnal if I said that they'd been rumoring Spy Kids forever and suddenly it was Returnal. That makes sense. I mean, that's where I am with that part of the conversation.
It did until you mentioned Spy Kids, because I don't know anyone who is like super, super invested in Spy Kids.
Aaron, help me out. I know you're begging for a Spy Kids game.
Yep.
Thank you, buddy.
Spy Kids 3 was great. That was the one where they got trapped in a video game.
That was a 3D one, right?
It was 3D, yeah.
Remember like the ad for that when they like had the hands reach into the audience? That was like during the rough part of 3D movies where you still had the red and blue glasses. And so most of the movie looked fucking awful until that one scene. And then like I would always look underneath them because I hated looking to the red and blue. But then if you do that, you risk missing like the one or two things they put in there. Anyway, Spy Kids aside, I'm very excited for them to be doing their own thing. I've talked a lot on this show and kind of any show I go on or any place on the internet that I want new. New is always better. It's not actually literally better. I'm just using, the How I Met Your Mother reference. New is always better. I want to see what you can do on your own. Like, I think too, especially it's interesting hearing them do something new in the wake of other conversations surrounding PlayStation and like Bend not getting to do, a sequel to Days Gone, but then it, transitioning to something else. And then the idea of like studios being like, I feel like I'm just a Last of Us machine trying to make these like remakes or remasters that were rumored. So I think we've seen, to Greg's point, like where those problems can come in and how that can be difficult to get talent excited about that. But there's so many things that hype me up about this. Like going back to Dornbush's article, like Thresh also mentions like transitioning from, remasters to remakes and this test to push themselves more and how they started originally with 15 people and they now have like 95 and they're hiring for more. So I feel like it's been a nice steady ramp up in people and in projects. Like I feel like they're prepared to execute and do something really cool. And I think it's really funny, blessing the tweet that you pulled in, the idea of like Game of the Year quality titles. Like that's such a like leaving it all out on the table statement to me. Like I'm used to seeing job postings mention stuff like, a background in multiplayer or VR or something, but to be like, we're trying to make like that dope shit. Like we're out here Game of the Year this year and now. MVP this, I feel like they're really gunning for that. Like even in this language, like I think that's very bold, but also telling for what they're like. Look, we already have the sauce. Like imagine us having the sauce with something that's completely our own. And they've had like these. I think they also mentioned in that same article that Dornbush wrote up that they've sort of been working on whatever idea they're developing for a while. It's not like they're like, oh, we can do something new. Time to get your notebooks out. Like they have ideas already in motion. So, I'm really excited for that.
See, I think it's awesome, especially if this is something they want to do. I'm not totally thrilled about it, just because I feel
Oh.
like for Greg's argument of like, be as a studio being like held back by making remakes and working with other people's toys and all that stuff. I feel like Bluepoint is the studio that has that are in the place where they can say we're the best at that. Nobody does this specific thing better than us. Like at PlayStation Studios, we hold so much value because we're able to take something and remake it, and no other studio stands up to us in terms of how good we're able to do this. Like when you look at Shadow Colossus and Demon Souls, the amount of polish, the way that those games look like they released for the first time on those platforms, right? Demon Souls, especially booting that thing up, and how hot that game is for a game that originally came out in like 2009, 2010. The fact that that game looks like that on the PS5 is borderline, comes off as like a miracle. the way that they're able to handle that thing. And I think Bluepoint historically, or at least with their last few games, have been able to do that on a level that I don't think we've really seen before from any other studio. So I think with them working on original content, that's kind of lost a bit in a way that makes me sad, because I would love to see them continue that. I would love to see them, like, what if they were the ones that were working on I don't know, like what PlayStation game do people want back? Siphon Filter? Like what if they got to bring forward a Siphon Filter? Or what if they got to bring forward a Dark Cloud? Or what if they got to bring forward, I'm sure there are more exciting games I can probably name than those ones. But like, bring forward classic PlayStation games that people love and adore, and work with them in a way that makes them feel modernized. Like that is a thing that, I know we talk about remakes and remasters all the time, and how maybe not as exciting those are compared to new and original stuff. But I think Bluepoint is a studio that makes that exciting. I was super excited for Shadow Colossus. Folks were super excited for Demon Souls. And so I feel like that's lost a little bit. That said, this seems like a move that they want to do. And so it's hard for me to get upset about it from that perspective, right? Because you always want studios to work on what they're passionate about or what they feel like doing. And I think that comes back to like the burnout perspective of it, and Greg mentioning the God of War Ragnarok comparison with Cory Barlog. I can easily see them being like, cool, we love this. This has been our era. In the way that even for Housemarque, the arcade stuff was their era, but they went on to make Returnal, and that is something dope. I can see Bluepoint going on to make what ends up being their Returnal, but I do feel like it's a little bit sad that we're losing this DNA. Not to say that they can never make another remake again, but
yeah, I mean, it's definitely that thing, right?
Mhm.
Where they can start off on it and do their own thing, and if it's poorly received, we're gonna go back and do the thing we were doing and go ahead and not swing on that. We'll worry about what's happening over here.
And this doesn't discount they're gonna work with an already existing IP. That's the thing that I think that's the back and forth that people have been having of like, cool, they say original content, they don't say original IP, which is very interesting. And I think if you're gonna get specific in that way, you would probably just say IP. So for them working on original content, I know back when they made the first remade Shadow Colossus, one of the ideas that people threw around was like, what if they made Shadow Colossus 2? Which would be the weirdest like left field thing. But for me, as somebody who really liked Shadow Colossus, the remake and the original, I would be for it, honestly. Like I'd get kind of excited about that. Or what if they made a lot of these ideas might be controversial, but what if they made a Demon Souls 2? Or what if they made a Bloodborne 2, like a sequel or an entry in a franchise that people love and adore, but it's hard to get off the ground because maybe From Software doesn't have the bandwidth for another Demon Souls, right? Or maybe Bend doesn't want to work on another Siphon Filter, right? What if Bluepoint were the ones to bring that back? I think there could be potential there too that could be very exciting, very cool.
It just gets weird because, again, going to this quote from the IGN article, right? Like our next project, we're working on original content right now. We can't talk about what that is, but the next one, I hear you of like, okay, original content. You're not saying original IP. You're saying, original content. So technically a Bloodborne 2 would count as that, right? Like that'd be a way around it or whatever. But I feel like you'd still be closer with your words than that, right? Now, granted, this isn't Herman talking that is being quoted in this article, but it's well, it was. But then the quote comes from Bluepoint president Marco Thruss, who's talking about the company. It's like, so, like, yeah, the headline on the IGN: PlayStation officially acquires Bluepoint Games. Next game planned to be an original, not a remake. Again, Demon Souls 2, Bloodborne 2, whatever. Not gonna be is. But like, is that really Is that how we phrase this? Because this isn't like a got you thing. This is a Jonathan Dornbush article on IGN.com, right?
For sure.
It's not like this was shouted at a Comic-Con panel. The guy's like, no, we're doing an original thing.
Content just seems like such a weird word to use when you could say IP, and IP people know what that means. That is like super
They're just
clear. And
making YouTube videos.
there's no way
It's
to
just content.
misinterpret that. Yeah, them saying original content makes me go, all right, so is it a new IP? Maybe it is a revival of something that they want to revive. And it's not a remake. It is an original game. And Siphon Filter is a very easy example. Maybe it is, hey, we're doing a Siphon Filter from the ground up that is Bluepoint's own Siphon Filter. That isn't even like you might be playing as Gabe Logan or whatever, but it is going to be our own story, our own gameplay.
I don't want to be Gabe.
Or whatever.
I don't want to be. Thank you. It was in my head too when it happened.
But who knows? Like it could also very easily be original IP. Maybe they just phrased it weird just that way. But
I mean, no, you're not wrong, because I mean, like that's even how I think that again, Dornbush is reporting here, right? His paragraph goes: Demon Souls was only released last November, and while Bluepoint isn't officially announcing its next game, Thrush explained that the studio is aiming to work on original content going forward. No exact details about what the quote original content Bluepoint is working on will be, so it remains unclear if it is a new game that is part of an existing IP or something new entirely.
Yeah, and I hesitate so hard with some of the examples I've given between Bloodborne and Demon Souls and all that stuff because fans tie those games so hard to Miyazaki, the director. But
Sure.
them having put out Demon Souls, I think puts them in a really good place to where if anybody was to put out a game called Demon Souls 2, or if anybody was to put out a game called Bloodborne 2, which would like go crazy in terms of reception and like people being like, oh fuck, they're putting out another Bloodborne or whatever the game is, I think Bluepoint would be the studio to get away with it because they proved themselves with Demon Souls 1.
I mean, this is what we're talking about, not to go too far off the path here, but when me and Tim were talking on Games Daily about these Konami rumors that they're, going to do Castlevania again and they're going to do Metal Gear Solid and they're going back to this and maybe it'll be a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake or whatever. It is that moment of like, oh, that's super cool. And then but it's Konami. Like, I don't fucking trust them and I don't know what they're doing and yada, yada, yada. Whereas with Bluepoint, like from the get-go of the rumor of Metal Gear Solid, you were like, oh, fuck yeah, they'd crush it. And I bet PlayStation would bring in Kojima and they'd figure this out and patch it up and yada, yada, yada. And so, yeah, to be coming off of Demon Souls and understand that game that way, it makes sense that, if they were like, we want to make our own game and we want to make a Demon Souls 2. If they wanted to be like, yeah, we want to make a Bloodborne 2, we want to expand off of that thing, then yeah, I could see that making sense. I could see them not getting as much backlash outside of, as a random studio doing something you don't know doing it. These people have put in the work and put in the time to show that they understand that kind of game.
Now, to keep this train moving, right? Well, that was all just Exhibit A. To jump into Exhibit B for PlayStation Studios growing, Sony's biggest UK studio, Firesprite, has just made an acquisition of its own. I'm going to pull from Stephen Talaby at Push Square. PlayStation Studios has grown quite a lot this year, with some notable acquisitions bolstering Sony's first-party lineup of developers. The most recent of these is Firesprite, and I guess this is before the Bluepoint one, a Liverpool-based studio that's already bigger than Sony's other UK teams combined. It's set to get even bigger, though. The developer has just made a purchase of its own. That's right, Firesprite, not Sony, has acquired Fabric Games, a small Manchester team. It'll be merged into the much larger studio, bringing the total headcount up to 265. It seems as though this acquisition was on the cards as part of Sony's plan to pick up Firesprite, which makes sense. Firesprite and Fabric Games have always had a close relationship. The latter team was founded by Graham Ankers, managing director of the former. The studios collaborated to bring the Persistence to multiple platforms, and Fabric has a couple of games to call its own, Filthy Lucre and The Lost Bear, 2 games I've not heard of.
You never played Filthy Lucre and The Lost Bear?
Is that 1 game or 2? Because I read that as 2 games.
It's 2. I just like it's. I like it as 1.
Yeah, no, I like when you said it like that, I was like, shit, it might be 1 game. Like Filthy Lucre might be having to square up with a lost bear, or maybe returning the bear to its home, so it's not lost anymore.
Bear, I played that for a little bit. What does that look like?
Are you thinking of Naughty Bear?
There it is. I remember. No, I did. I fucking reviewed Naughty Bear. I'll never forget Naughty Bear.
God.
All right, Lost Bear, I'm back there.
It feels as though Firesprite is being positioned by Sony as a major player among its first-party fleet, with a number of employees comparable to the likes of Sucker Punch, Guerrilla, and Bend Studio. We could be looking at a real powerhouse, which is the thing that's most notable here, the fact that this brings the total headcount of the studio up to 265, which if you want to talk about Bluepoint coming out and being like, we want to make Game of the Year level titles, this feels like Firesprite being like, we want to develop, I mean, maybe not Game of the Year level, but we want to be put alongside the lines of a Sucker Punch or a Guerrilla or Bend, if you want to include that example as well, right? Like, I don't know, what is your guys' take on this?
Janet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to, well, is it always good to grow? It can be good. Obviously, like things can't always go south, but I mean, we know that Fire Sprite is working on that new like AAA narrative adventure game. So I think it's nice to know that they have projects in the works and are also like looking to grow as well to kind of facilitate the development of those projects.
250 or 265 is huge. That is such a, like, when they announced that, I'm like, oh yeah, you're bringing this small thing, and I'm like, oh my god, they're that big. I totally, when we were talking about this, and like, oh, the studio that actually spun out of Liverpool, where they've been working on the MotorStorm stuff. Now they went off to do their own thing. Now they're back with Sony. I totally missed the fact that they were already that large, and so yeah, like. That is a fucking team. That is somebody coming in, no pun intended for the Lost Bear, loaded for bear, right? Like they are coming in to make something big and hopefully make something great. And that's super exciting. And the fact that, yeah, we got Fire Sprite, and now they've picked up Fabric Games, and it's just like continuing to be this giant force across the pond. That's really exciting to see what it'll actually be.
Yeah. So to jump in, or to continue, right? That's Exhibit B. Exhibit C, Destruction All-Star Studio Lucid has been handed the Twisted Metal revival. This is Andy Robinson at VGC. PlayStation has handed its Twisted Metal series revival to Destruction All-Stars developer Lucid Games, sources have told VGC. According to the sources, the new car combat installment, which by release will be the series' first in over a decade, has started early development at the Liverpool, UK-based studio. One person with knowledge of Lucid's plans suggested that the revival would be built around a free-to-play model, partly in response to Destruction All-Stars' last-minute transition from a premium game to a PlayStation Plus title. The release is planned to coincide with an upcoming TV series in 2023, we're told. And yeah, this is one that, when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think one of the questions I brought up was, who the fuck is making this Twisted Metal game? And I think the first thing that we theorized was, oh, maybe you give it to the Destruction All-Stars team. The fact that that is exactly what happened, I think, is
we
hilarious.
all said it, and
they probably heard that, and they were like, maybe I think they're on to something here.
That's a good
Obviously,
idea.
they watched the show.
No,
Fan behavior, to be honest.
We all said it, and then everybody follows up with, it's too obvious. You can only think of that because of Destruction All-Stars. And then it sure as shit is like, yeah, well, all right, cool. I guess that tracks. That makes sense.
Can we run a multi-billion-dollar company?
Between the three of us, I think we could run one PlayStation.
Yeah, we have to only be 1/3 of a really knowledgeable person.
Yeah. And I might as well round this out right here, right? Exhibit D, a new Ghostbusters game seems to be coming, and it'll probably and I put probably. I say
probably is doing a lot of work in this sentence.
Probably is doing a lot of work, and that is just me. That is just me straight up, like, projecting my own thoughts and opinions. But it could be a PlayStation exclusive, is what I'll say.
I think you got in your head because that's how we ended talking about the news today, and then Tim had a question that he asked for this show. So go ahead and read the news, and then we'll get the question.
Yeah, and I'll sum up the news because it's a longer news story. But basically, one of the co-founders of IllFonic, Raphael Sadiq, who's also an R&B artist, he was on a music podcast this last week, and he started talking about IllFonic. And one of the things he said was like, "Oh yeah, the Friday the 13th Predator. Also, we're working on a Ghostbusters game right now." And there you go. IllFonic, the developers of I just said them, Predator Hunting Grounds and Friday the 13th, are theoretically working on a Ghostbusters game right now. And the reason why I say could be, or probably is, a PlayStation exclusive to some extent is because of one, Predator Hunting Grounds came out and was PlayStation PC, published by PlayStation. Ghostbusters, the IP, of course, owned by Sony. I feel like the natural progression there would be, okay, cool. So Sony gives them the IP to work with. We're going to treat it the same way we treated Predator Hunting Grounds, which is we're going to publish it and make it PlayStation and PC. That's where that thought process comes through. But I want to pass it to Greg, the Ghostbusters aficionado, to bring in Tim's question and give us his thoughts.
So we obviously rant and raved KindaFunny Games Daily about how amazing this is and how cool this is, at least for me. And then at the end, Tim said, I have a PSI Love You question. Do you, and this is along the lines where we were talking about, like, will this be PlayStation exclusive? Will this be published by PlayStation? Will this be its own thing, kind of thing? And for the record, I don't buy it. I don't think so. The article from PC Games N that we originally referenced, talks about Gio Corsi in there and kind of like, oh, maybe that's somehow, and I don't buy that that's connected at all. I also, for full disclosure, we know Gio is our friend. He has not said anything either way about this to us ever, because we would never talk about it. Did you leave PlayStation to go be a spy at IllFonic? Because they're going to buy it. That doesn't make sense. Nobody would ever think that. I don't buy that. I think it's just coincidence Gio went over there. I think coming off of this, that Sony the Ghost Core Sony wants to make as much money as possible. I bet they want the game everywhere. I bet Elphonic wants the game everywhere. Unless, PlayStation swooped in and was like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The main question we had is Tim was like, do you think this, if it's exclusive, do you think they'd buy Elphonic ever? And so that was the question here, is like, as we talk about all the Sony first party stuff, does Elphonic make sense to be picked up for the Sony first party? Blessing out of you. You're back to you.
I'm gonna give an answer that I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. Part of I was nervous to give this answer because Elphonic isn't necessarily known for the quality of PlayStation Studios. When you think PlayStation Studios, I think you do associate that automatically with polished games, quality, big budget, big scope, all these things. But if I'm ruling with this along the lines of they put out PlayStation, or they put out Predator Hunting Grounds under PlayStation PlayStation Studios wasn't a thing yet, but if PlayStation Studios was a thing at the time, Predator Hunting Grounds would have been a PlayStation Studios game, if I understand it correctly, because PlayStation published that game.
Correct. It would have had the PlayStation Studios logo thing in front of it, yeah.
Yeah, it would have had the logo in front of the game, and that game would have counted in that brand. I could easily see this game being another situation that is along those lines, and even removed from the Geo Corsi thing, because I think that could just be a huge coincidence. Just along the lines of, hey, we've worked together before. Hey, this is a Sony IP. Like, I think that the same thought process made sense for Spider-Man and Insomniac in a way, and I know that's probably not one for one either, but I think you do have those business relationships there of, hey, we have Ghostbusters, work with Ghostbusters. Hey, we've published exclusively on your platform before. Let's do it again. Like, even Arcade Again, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say that was exclusive because that was part of the PlayStation State of Play. KindaFunny.com / you're wrong, and I'm sure Greg is looking it up right now.
Yeah, but I believe right now I'm pretty sure you're right that yes, it is. I think it's exclusive to PlayStation and PC.
Yeah, and if you've done that enough so far, I think that is maybe them not explicitly like PlayStation growing them or PlayStation trying to build that in the way that they kind of built that with Housemarque. But I do think there's something in the water there in terms of, hey, we've worked together so much now. We've already been making these games, and if Ghostbusters is successful, why not just buy Elphonic, since that relationship is already there and that process is kind of already there. So yeah, I'm gonna say yeah. I think it would make sense.
I don't think they fit the mold. And I don't think that's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I just don't think that Sony looks at them and is like, we need them forever. This goes always back to the other thing we talk about, right? Of like, okay, when you used to sit here and look at the PlayStation and landscape, right? And go, all right, what don't they have? What studio would you pick up to fill in this place? And yes, platforms for Arcade Again are just Windows and PS5. Who would you get to fit into this thing? You'd be like, well, we don't have a multiplayer game, right? We don't have a you used to say you don't have a multiplayer shooter. That was when we had then Killzone, and then Killzone went away, and yada, yada, yada. But PlayStation stopped chasing that. And so for this asymmetrical multiplayer that Elphonic's known for, right? When we're talking about Friday the 13th, we're talking about Predator, and that's what I'm saying Ghostbusters is going to be. I just don't know if PlayStation looks at that and is like, that's something we definitely need. I think you look at something like Predator and they're like, that's something we can do the PlayStation Studios look for. We can do something that makes you, for all intents and purposes, there. But do we want to hire you and bring you on? And I know it's not everything. And, you kind of beat around the bush and stuff, because it's this weird one where I am so positive. I have so many positive stories about Friday the 13th and Predator, right? But like, there's no beating around the bush of like, Friday the 13th has a 61 Metacritic on PlayStation 4 on Metacritic. Nice one, Greg. And then Predator PS4 Metacritic is 56. Like, these are games that aren't PlayStation Studios. These are games that aren't the Returnals and the Ratchets and what that is. And that's not to say PlayStation Studios isn't going to put out a stinky game here and there, right? Like, we talk about Destruction All-Stars. Like, does anybody give a shit about it? Like, and again, not that I'm saying these games were bad. Obviously, I love them. I know Friday the 13th, a whole bunch of people like me loved. I know Predator hit with Nick for a long time, and then me and a bunch of different people. Like, these are games designed, I think, to appeal to fans of the genre, fans of the property, right? And so that is an interesting line to walk of, this isn't Back 4 Blood. And granted, we don't know how Back 4 Blood is actually going to come out, but I'll go, it isn't Left 4 Dead. These aren't games people are like, oh my God, these are 9s. They're saying these are games that are fun to play with your friends. These are games fun to go fuck around with. And I think PlayStation, when they see something special in that, might say, all right, cool, let's go do that. Let's go be a part of it. I think that's honestly the way it works the other way, where we want to talk about Geo Corsi. I bet it was that Gio Corsi saw Friday 13th, then he saw what they were behind closed doors demos of Predator, got that on the PlayStation team, and then liked working with the team so much that they start spitballing ideas, maybe Ghostbusters. And he's like, you know what? I'd rather go work on that than be here trying to get more games into PlayStation. I'd rather go help make games. That's my argument for what really happened there. Probably, maybe. And so, yeah, I don't think they're a great PlayStation Studios fit. And so I don't buy that. First off, I have no skin in the game. I don't know. I don't buy that because it's a Sony Pictures thing. It's going to be PlayStation exclusive. I still think they'll want to pad the bottom line and go to your local Target right now. There is an all-out front push right now on Ghostbusters of trying to make Ghostbusters relevant again for this movie. And then I'm sure continue that on down the line, hopefully, knock on wood for me, once it's reinvigorated. So like I would think they want that game everywhere and they would want to go, especially for, as you know, Avengers goes to Game Pass. That's super exciting. And I can't play with those people because I'm on PlayStation. Like multiplayer games are hard to keep an audience. Multiplayer games that have a 60 on Metacritic are hard to keep an audience. You want as large a pool as you could possibly get. And I think that's the smarter move there. So I don't buy it in terms of that, in terms of IllFonic coming over. But everything else, we're still talking about Sony first parties. And so the question begs, now that we have all these people now under the umbrella, all these things happening, who is going to be the MVP for PlayStation Studios in 2022? And again, we are defining that most valuable player blessing.
I want to hear what Jana has to say.
I don't want to go first. I went first the last time. Someone else go first.
2022. I mean, it's a big year.
I want
right?
a real answer. I don't want one of these long, like, start with the answer. Y'all always want to be like, well, answer.
This question was only brought up to me this podcast. I need time to think.
So what? That's the whole thing. No, it's like
we pay you a flat fee to be on the podcast. Me and Blessing get paid by the minute. All right, we have to pad these things out.
This episode isn't over 2 hours. I don't get paid, Jane. I don't know you know that. So like
later for what we're playing.
To give a lay of the land, right? Like next year, the big hitters that we know so far: God of War, Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, the racing game that everybody loves, Gran Turismo. What am I missing? Because I'm sure there's plenty I'm missing there.
MLB The Show 2023.
Oh man, who can forget? The game that's also coming to Xbox and PC platforms. It's probably gonna be on Game Pass again.
You'll be happy with it.
Game Pass is great, by the way.
I think you're hitting the big hitters. Yeah, who are we? I don't think you're missing anybody. I guess Naughty Dog maybe if they do factions too, right? If that actually ships or whatever that's going to be.
I don't have hope.
No. Well, I mean, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask you: do you have hope for Ragnarok?
100%.
Yeah. Do y'all not have hope for Ragnarok?
Greg doesn't.
Hope is a dangerous thing. I guarantee you'll play Horizon next year. I would not.
I'm gonna throw Guerrilla Games because Horizon Forbidden West, I feel like that doesn't have the angst attached to it that the next God of War entry does. Not that I think that means anything for like what's actually going to be produced. And at the end of the day, if Ragnarok's hot fire, like somehow it's an 11, which is like both of these games have the challenge of needing to match or exceed what are pretty much masterpieces almost across the board in people's perception. So that's always a rough spot to be in. So I'm going to go Guerrilla Games with a light shout out to Blue Point if they were to do something, just because they're out there like, yo, we're only hiring if you got that Game of the Year talent. But I'm like, I don't think that's enough time to actually make Game of the Year. So that's my answer because y'all took too long.
Damn, Janet's rules. I'm scared for you, Blessing, when I'm not around. All right, just let her be the lead host.
We can break it down after. Like I'm down to do that. But the whole like, oh well, maybe like boom, answer it. Give the answer, and then
Santa Monica.
Listen, to be fair, I gave the answer way quicker than Greg on the last one. Greg was hounding me to give the answer.
On a curve for this,
and I was so quick.
We're both in trouble.
Give an answer. That's it. Question, give an answer. It's not, there you go.
If God of War Ragnarok comes out, if God of War actually ships next year to Sony Santa Monica,
I'm gonna say Guerrilla.
Yeah.
But I want to hear what your argument for God of War is. Then I'll give my argument for Guerrilla.
I'm just great. You're grading off past work at this point, right? Where I think God of War 2018 was a better game than Horizon Zero Dawn. And so I think both of these will be a step forward. I think both of these games will be incredible. I'm fucking pumped for both of them. Don't get me wrong. But I think based on track records, if I was going to look and say, all right, what are we doing? I would think God of War Ragnarok would be better based on what we've seen before, both in terms of combat, story, acting, stuff like that. I hope I'm wrong. I love Aloy. I love that story. I love that open world. But I just think if they come down and actually go head to head on that, I think you'd see God of War come out on top.
I think the room for growth is actually what makes me lean on Horizon Forbidden West. I do think you're right in that if you're looking at track record, And if I had to probably put like money on it or something, I probably might go God of War Ragnarok. But just like for answering this question, I think because they have a little bit more room for growth, because of the open world structure that I think we've seen, I hate to make the Breath of the Wild comparison, but that is also where we're at. We're like in a post Breath of the Wild world where we've I think people have really gotten to know the open world formula. I think they're already making, even in like the not previews, but like the showcases we've seen so far, they've already shown off ways that they're refining and adding and iterating on what they have in a way that, like, again, God of War, we haven't really seen as much of it. So that's why I would, and then also that's if it even comes out in 2022, because it doesn't have a hard date, right? It's just a window.
It says 2022. And that's one of my thing where I'm like, could be easily.
So I think between the two, God of War is also the most likely to be delayed. If one of them gets delayed, it would probably be God of War. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Guerrilla Games, because they have that, like, I think it's going to be easier, quote unquote, for Forbidden West to be better than their last project versus I think Ragnarok facing God of War, was it 2018, right? Is a harder jump, because how do you, it was so well made that how do you build from that?
That's part of the heart of where I come from with it, where I agree, Greg, that I think God of War 2018 is leaps and bounds better than Horizon Forbidden West. I love God of War 2018, and Horizon Forbidden West, I was like, this is very good, but it's not my favorite game. Look at the trailers that we've gotten this last year for both God of War and Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West. With those ones, I was way more impressed by the Horizon Forbidden West trailer than the God of War trailer. I think part of that is God of War 2018 was so good, and from what we got out of the God of War Ragnarok trailer at the last PlayStation showcase, it was a lot of, oh, this is more of the same. Like, this is, like the game looks similar. The story, of course, is there's been progression in the story, but in terms of the actual game and the look of it itself, it struck me less as a innovation and more of a follow-up. Whereas Horizon Forbidden West, in that trailer that we got in the state of play beginning of summer, end of spring, that gameplay trailer for me did feel like more of an innovation on Horizon in a way that I'm actually really hyped for. Like the ways in which like they're adding in more interesting elements with the climbing, the glider, which I'm naming Breath of the Wild elements right now, but like, I think that is the thing that's going to take that game to the next level. Them looking at other open world games and being like, cool, how do we adjust and how do we continue to improve on Horizon? I think there's way more that you can actually improve on in Horizon than in God of War. And from what we've seen of that last trailer, I think they're actually improving. Like, I think even the melee combat, that was one of my big complaints with the original game. The melee combat in this game looks way better just based off of that gameplay trailer that we got. Like, so much of it looks so better than the OG game that coming out of both Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West, I think I'm going to come out of Horizon Forbidden West being like, oh shit, this is way better than the first one. And God of War Ragnarok, I'm probably going to come out of it being like, damn, that story is similar as the first game, but like, man, I enjoyed that experience. But I think overall, in terms of MVP, God, I guess we're going to get into defining this shit again, because what I'm describing is similar to the Returnal thing of most improved. But I guess I'm still going to stand by it that I think Horizon Forbidden West is going to surprise people.
This is a different aspect of the conversation because, there's a million games coming out in February, right? And my one thing with like the main stain for Forbidden West is similar to what happened to Zero Dawn, right? Where it's like the later in the year we got for that game, the less people were talking about it, right? There's still the aspect of like, what other games are going to be announced for February and around that time, and there's so much going on, whereas like maybe they are kind of like staying away from a specific date for God of War because they want that to be like the one thing that people talk about for that week, where it's like, yeah, like what are we talking about more at the end of the year? I imagine like I feel like God of War is locked in for 2022. I think they might be questioning of like, is it their summer game, or is it their big blockbuster summer game, or is it their typical video game fall type of game? That's my one thing.
Yeah, in terms of the February conversation, I think Horizon Forbidden West has the benefit of being the biggest title announced for February, but it is also coming after in January we're getting Elden Ring, right? Because that comes out January 21st, and then
are you getting Elden Ring?
How fucking dare you? Why would you even speak
believe everything you read, Blessing?
How dare you even say those words? But yeah, in February, you're having the week before, or I guess a couple weeks before Horizon, you're going to get Dying Light 2, which I still think puts Horizon as the biggest game in that month. But then also a week after Horizon, you're getting Saints Row. And it kind of sucks to be sandwiched between two other open world games that people are probably going to be devoting a similar amount of time into. I think that's where you're going to get into the murkiness of it. And Elden Ring is open world too, you know, like don't forget that, right? And so when you get into the murkiness of, all right, how well do open worlds stay with people, right? Like how much time are people going to be able to spend in this world? Like Saints Row, I think is going to have a lot of hype going into it because people love Saints Row. Dying Light 2, I'm sure that's going to have people excited for it too. Horizon Forbidden West is gonna, I think, have that thing again of having to compete with other games, and thankfully, it doesn't seem like any of those games are Breath of the Wild 2, and so you have that. But yet, at least, you know, who knows what Nintendo says tomorrow? Release it on the same day.
We shall see. That's definitely the thing about it, where it's like, first off, Saints Row, you saw that behind closed doors, right?
Yeah.
Is that coming next year? You think? Is that gonna hit that date?
That's a good question. I don't know, man. I
hope
hope
people
so.
ran to that spring fertile ground to get their pre-orders going. Are they actually going to fucking hit? And I don't know. But it just seems like I should know more, have seen more about.
You're right.
Saints Row at this point.
They showed us quite a bit, but you're right that what I saw behind closed doors never felt like this is a finished game that's ready to come out whenever. I could easily see that game being delayed further into 2022.
Yeah, so I think it is next year a race between for MVP, Guerrilla and Santa Monica. But it's also this interesting argument where, you know, you're talking about like these two trailers we saw for Horizon and God of War. Honestly, for both of them, I felt kind of the same, where I watched them and I thought they looked great, and I haven't thought about them much since then because they looked so much like the games before. Games that I loved, games that I remember fondly, but even Blessing, and I know when you played Horizon, what, in 2020? Was that when you were playing that one?
Yeah, like I played it. I played like the first like 8 hours or whatever when it first came out, and then I went back to it to beat it in the beginning of 2020.
And so, like, you know, the melee was my complaints. Like, I remember so little about the moment-to-moment gameplay of Horizon. I remember having a lot of fun with it. I remember enjoying it, but I don't remember criticisms, which is good and bad, I guess. But what it means, I think, for the next one is like, I look at this trailers, I'm like, this looks great. I don't remember how much different this is. Like, I don't, it's not like I'm sitting there going, this was the one main thing I want them to fix, and they fixed it. And so, like, even looking at God of War, where I know, oh man, they use the same boat animation or whatever. I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck. Just give me more God of War. But it's the same thing of like, I look at that and I'm like, that looks fun. But it could also be God of War DLC. And I don't know if I would be able to, if you told me that, I would be able to separate the difference from it.
Mm-hmm. They do have the dogs though.
No, they do have the dogs. Maybe next year there's a dark horse we won't see come. Get this. Prestigious PS I Love You XOXO award, the PlayStation Studios MVP. Once again, congratulations to Insomniac. We'll see if you somehow surprise us next year and take it as well. But for now, Blessing, close me out with some PlayStation updates.
Yeah, so I have even a couple more updates for you. So Sony has introduced free game trials to the PS5. I'm going to pull real quick from Andy Robinson at Video Games Chronicle. In an email sent to PS5 users on Friday, the platform holder announced that Death Stranding Director's Cut and Sackboy Big Adventure can now be downloaded for free and played for several hours. The game trials are available via the PlayStation Store until October 28th, and the time limit begins when players begin their download. So those with faster connections will get more time with the games than others. Death Stranding Director's Cut can be played for 6 hours, and Sackboy Big Adventure can be played for 5 hours, according to Sony's marketing. The trials are only applicable to the PlayStation 5 versions of the game, and any DLC purchased during the free period will only be usable after expiration if users purchase the full game. Recent patents suggested that Sony may be planning to add PlayStation 5 games to its streaming service, PlayStation Now, which could potentially offer a smoother way for players to trial games in the future. But yeah, this is one that we talked about a little bit, but like to give context to it, right? Like it's kind of 2 steps forward, a step back in terms of, hey, we're offering free game trials. Oh, that's awesome. Also, it's timed. It's like 6 hours from when you click download, and it's like, wait, hold on, Death Stranding is 60 something gigs. This is going to take me an hour to download. How much time am I losing? You know, they're only starting to roll it out, and I believe it's only in the UK right now. And so I think it's something that gets fixed and improved as time goes. But that's where we're sitting right now with free game trials.
I mean, it's one of those where I don't know how hard you want to pat them on the back for something everything should have. Like, I can't believe that you want to talk about such a dramatic step backwards from when on Xbox 360, every game had a trial when you went to Xbox Live that you could try and play, like a demo or whatever. Like, it's ridiculous that in this digital age, there isn't and I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination to have a turnkey demo solution, yada, yada, yada. So I don't want to be like, great job, PlayStation, on this. At least they're doing something. And again, like, you want to go, oh man, it starts as soon as I download. I'm with you. That sucks, and we're still existing this, data caps and all these other reasons around it or whatever. But I would think for something as big as Death Stranding, by the time you click it, you're at least interested. Right? I think this might be my kind of game. And so then even if it takes 3 hours to download, you're gonna know pretty quick. And a demo usually is what, like, it used to be 30 minutes or whatever of a game, 45 minutes of a game. So it's like you're still getting that, if not more, out of this, and your progress carries over, and this and stuff. Like, again, it's not the perfect solution, but it's at least a step forward to making one for something I can't believe we don't have anymore.
I wonder for what reason do they have it as when you click download versus when you click start on the game for the first time.
Also, does that mean the timer starts literally when I click download? So like once I click download, like I have to play it that day.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's for the next 6 hours.
That's whack. So I feel like this is a cool idea. It's like a monkey's paw moment then for me, where it's like free game trials, just these 2 games, only until the 28th. Once you hit download, like, here's the thing, like, especially when it's a bigger game too, like a lot of times I download stuff and then I'm like, I'll play this tomorrow. Like I'm trying to get more in the habit, especially with like, in our line of work. Even if I'm really busy, I'm like, let's at least download the game today, whatever game I'm playing, because that thing can take anywhere from 8 minutes to 80 minutes. So let's get that going at least. And the thought of having to like have that done and then set aside the time, it just feels petty. And like that should have, I just wonder why they couldn't do it in a less inconvenient way. I feel like there has to be some type of weird limitation for that reason. Greg, do you have any insight into this?
No. My question would be to your point, because I think we're on the same page about it. Would you be fine if it was click download? It takes as much time as it does. You get 1 hour of this game once you hit play.
I would be better with that. Yeah. Like 1 hour of actual in-game time versus 6 hours. You click download 6 hours from now, it's done. I feel like that's just a weird thing.
The 6 hours or 1 hour, however much time, but via the PlayStation clock, because we all know that thing's inaccurate. So 6 hours of a PlayStation clock, that's like 20 hours of gameplay time. No, but like and as far as time for demos, I think any amount of time is better than nothing. I think 45 minutes to an hour minimum is kind of like the lowest I'd like to see these things ever go. But I think for games as big as Death Stranding and Sackboy even, 6 hours is like a really nice scope of the game. I mean, I think for Sackboy you need like way less than that. Like just because the gameplay the core gameplay is very much the same, and the things that change are like the level design that helps you just kind of enjoy the tool set more. While Death Stranding has like all these other elements because it's a differently structured game, like dramatically. It's open world. It has like story stuff that's way more significant than like Sackboy Big Adventure story. Like you kind of know what you're getting into as soon as you start. So I do like having like a more generous time, but the fact that it's sort of, you're weirdly like locked into being like, okay, I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to make sure like I'm hardwired in if I can. It just seems like you're making
it seems like a weird solution. Yeah, I'm looking like I want to double check real quick because I was like, this is how it works, right? Because this is weird. And yeah, I'm looking at the first website that popped up, enemy.com. Oh, that's a cool name actually. Now that I say it out loud, it's like the letters N, M, and E, but when you say it out loud, it's like enemy.
Oh yeah.
They have an article on it, and they write here, the problem is that there's a pretty big catch for how these game trials actually work. Players have a limited time from when they select download trial on the PlayStation Store to actually play these games. That means the download time is calculated as part of the game trial itself. Death Stranding Director's Cut is available for 6 hours from the download start time, whilst Sackboy Big Adventure is available for 5. And so yeah, like the problem I think for me is just that it hinges on having a good internet connection to like to get these games downloaded in a decent time so you can actually get into these. But if it was,
I think too, like there's so many more solutions to this kind of thing too. I think for especially something as big as Death Stranding, like you could afford to just do free weekend or something. I get that Sackboy you wouldn't want to necessarily do a free weekend because people could beat the game in that time. But also I feel like the amount of people that are down to beat the game in that time to avoid buying it that haven't already played it, like how much is that really hurting? Were they ever going to buy the game anyway? So I kind of wonder, like, I do get wanting to avoid developers getting screwed over, and we've seen this go south too, like with Steam's refund after 2 hours, which sucks if your game's 90 minutes. Like, we've seen a lot of like errors with this. So
that's the tough thing, is there's not a catch-all solution, because I think one of the solutions you can give is, hey, we can go back to the 360 era of every game has a demo, but I think the argument there is demos are kind of hard to make for developers. And so if you have every game from AAA games to even indie games having demos, then it's like, all right, can we really mandate that?
But
Can
that's
we
why
really
this
make
hour
everybody
thing
do
could
that?
work so well. You know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean? And granted, it works so well in a whole legal nightmare for PlayStation of everything. Oh, cool, we're signing you, but the first hour of your game is always going to be available. That
but I
I'm
think
sure
you
a lot
then
of
get
people are
into,
like, that fucking sucks. No, please
yeah,
no.
I think you get into like, all right, but like, what about games like a short hike, which you can beat in like an hour, right? Like,
Exactly.
like what can you mandate? Could you mandate it based on price? I think we've had this conversation recently, right? Like, could you mandate it based on if you're above $40, then the first hour of your game has to be playable for players. I think maybe that's the way you could do it. But either way, like it is the monkey paw thing, right? Of like, I'm glad they're doing this. Improve it as you go, but like keep figuring it out. Like continue to build on this. And then one more for PlayStation updates. October's PS Now lineup has been revealed. You're getting The Last of Us Part 2 up until January 3rd, Fallout 76, Amnesia Collection, Desperados 3, Final Fantasy 8 Remastered, Victor Vran Overkill Edition, and then yet another Zombie Defense HD. Cool.
Last of Us Part 2?
Till like January 3rd.
So?
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, what?
Don't get me wrong. I
You
mean,
have
it's not
6
Game
hours.
Pass. It's not Game Pass, right? It's not you have it forever, but
Okay, I've been really quick. I've been talking about this a while on the show, but like, I'm gonna try to post it somewhere more official. Please let me know what PlayStation Now games I need to hit up. Because I finally got PlayStation Now, and by I finally got it, I mean Isaiah got it, and I'm gonna use his PlayStation Now because he got it for the year too. I was like, oh snap! I thought I'd have like 30 days and have to like try to min max this thing, but. I'm finally gonna test it out. I'll have real concrete feedback. I know sometimes y'all are like, y'all always dragging PS Now, but most of y'all don't got it. I'm like, I don't got it because it seems whack. That's the drag. That's the point. But now I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there, and I'll be specific.
I love that you have it, and it makes me want. I pitched the idea to you, I think, months ago about like, what if we did a PS Now hashtag We Played This, where we just all get PS Now for a month and just try it out to see.
We should do it. I mean, I have it. Let's go. Let's do it.
Because I was thinking about this weekend, or whenever this news first came out, because I think it might have leaked before it actually officially came out, but. I was thinking, I was like, man, why am I so bummed out when it comes to PS Now? Whenever we talk about PS Now, I feel like I'm always kind of bummed with it, especially when you compare it to Game Pass. And we've had those conversations a million times. But like I think for me, it's part of the thing is if you ask me, hey, what games are on PS Now, I wouldn't be able to tell you any of them. I guess now I'd be able to tell you that Last of Us Part 2 is on there, but I couldn't tell you any
Sly
other game that's on
Cooper,
PS
I think.
Now.
That's all I know. Oh, I saw like Greg's Bread Game is on there. Yes. To me, it's Greg's Bread Game. That's
I like
how
that. That's a better name for it. They
it.
should have done that. They should have done that.
Yeah.
For
A bunch of the
But, like,
Ratchet and Clank games are on there. Yeah.
I feel like.
But like I feel if you ask me
games are
right
on
now, if you ask me what games are on Game Pass, I'd be like, oh yeah, 12 minutes. You can get I forget if Death's Door is on there. That might
all
be
the Bethesda
example.
games.
But like all the Bethesda games, you can get a lot of EA games on there as well. All the Microsoft first party games are on there.
Yeah.
Like
All
and that
four of
right
them.
there is a large chunk, and there are also a bunch of games coming day and date all the time. And so like I think of games like the one that Tim loves, that's his game of the year. That's on there as well.
Artful Escape, yeah.
Artful Escape. Back for Blood is going to be on there. I can go on and keep listing Xbox Game Pass games, but like I can tell you much about the library on PS Now, and I think that's part of the problem is that there's nothing on there where I'm like, oh shit, I'm just gonna play this on PS Now because
I do think even this
fuck is on
lineup
there?
that you mentioned here is sort of a mixed bag, right? Where like Last of Us Part 2, it's like, oh, like big deal brand recognition. But then there's also like Fallout 76, which like that's a very mixed bag game. And then it's like, oh, there's this one, but this is kind of old. So it's like a weird.
yeah, I don't want to play Desperados 3.
You know what this looks like? You know what this lineup looks like? Someone's shelf. Like just like a random ass person's shelf.
I mean, the
Of
problem
games.
you're talking about here again, and I know, like, it's a ongoing conversation of if it's evil or not or whatever, but we're talking about marketing. And the fact that PlayStation Now isn't a big deal to the majority of PlayStation players because it isn't a big deal to PlayStation.
Yep.
Xbox Game Pass is a big deal because it's a big deal to Xbox, and they make a big point about that. And what I'm talking about off the just jump of that, right, is like, what is on PlayStation Now? And I opened up, PlayStation.com. I've drilled into it here, and I'm looking at what's on it, right? And it's got all of these games. In the chat, Janet, people were going, when you started talking about, I don't know what's on there or whatever, right? One of the first ones I saw pop up, right, was... there it is. Corwin says Avengers, Janet, Greg would say. And then somebody else, Dave Bolson, goes Marvel's Avengers. And then I'm on PlayStation.com in the PlayStation Now section under M for Marvel's Avengers, right? It is not there. So is this list out of date or is the chat out of date? I
think the
remember
chat's
Marvel's
out of date.
Avengers being on it, but now
I think the thing
Avengers
is
is on
too-
Game Pass.
I think it might be gone.
rotation, there's like a lack of, and this is funny because I'm like, I'm gonna finally play it so I can be specific in my criticism, and I'm like, I'm gonna go into criticism one more time. I think there's the cadence feels like less natural or more noticeable because I know Game Pass games leave too, like those games will stay
of course.
forever as well, but it feels like some of them maybe move through faster, or like even just in this lineup, right? Like the only thing that has a leave date is Last of Us Part 2, which is also, I would argue, the most appealing thing on this list. So it's kind of in like this weird state. But I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna make a list. I'm gonna try to play through as much as I can. I'm excited about it.
They're usually clear when they announce things. Like I feel like they're typically pretty clear of like when those are gonna leave. I think it's a weird decision to have first party games go to the service and then leave eventually. I think that's
that's the thing
decision.
that's the thing that bugs me out when I read Last of Us Part 2 and then it says leaving January 3rd. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
like that's the one you have control over. I get that it's a big game,
it's a good service, and like I've been saying for months, it's just there needs to be tweaks here and there. And like Greg's saying, like I think it's mainly a marketing thing. I think the reason Game Pass I feel like got so big was because Xbox hyped themselves up with Game Pass that made everybody think, oh, I should try it because, you know, Blessing, I know you talked about for years of like, dude, they're just giving Game Pass away. Like, hey, here's $1, fucking have Game Pass for 3 months or whatever. And like PlayStation just doesn't do that. And I'm sure if more people, like if PlayStation did that more and more people got into the service, I think there would be a lot of people who would be positive on PlayStation Now. Again, like I think the biggest thing that I don't think will ever be solved that's a problem for PlayStation Now is being able to download PS3 games. You still have to stream PS3 games. The only games that you can download are PS4 games and the PS2 to PS4 games, right? So I
think another thing too, and I didn't mean to belabor the PlayStation Now conversation, but it's a good conversation.
I think it's needed because I do think that there's actual reasons. Oh, why don't you guys talk about PlayStation Now the way you don't talk about it, or you talk about Xbox Game Pass? Because Xbox Game Pass, they've made a point of making exciting. They've also made the messaging clear. Anything first party will be there day and date. That's why you hear people talking about Game Pass is because they are using Game Pass. Last of Us Part 2 is on PlayStation Now. Awesome. I platinumed that last year. And again, to be clear, this is me, fucking my ivory tower, you know what I mean? But it is that thing of I'm so in the moment of trying to play things fresh that when old games come to this service, that's great for people who missed them. I just didn't miss them. So I don't.
And that's my thing is I don't ever expect PlayStation first party games to come day and date to PlayStation Now. But do any games come day and date to PlayStation Now? Because when I think of me and my usage of Xbox Game Pass, I played Artful Escape on Xbox Game Pass. I played 12 Minutes on Xbox Game Pass. Both of those I played day and date. Death's Door I don't think was on Xbox Game Pass, but if it was, I would have played that day and date on Xbox Game Pass. I played Space Jam: A New Legacy on Xbox Game Pass for like 30 minutes because that was like the funny like little game that they put out there. In past years, I played Outer Wilds on Xbox Game Pass. I was
like, when are you gonna name a good game, Blessing? Like, this is not a convincing argument.
Damn, just roast. You know what?
I'm sorry, am I wrong?
No, I'm with you. I didn't like Artful Escape for 12 minutes.
No shit.
You're right.
He likes Artful Escape.
I have PlayStation Now up on the other screen, right? The main page right now. Latest Killing Floor 2, Final Fantasy 7, the original. All right, cool. Windbound, Pathfinder, Kingmaker, Moonlighter, great game everybody should play, and then See All. It's like this isn't an exciting lineup to toss out.
Yeah, but also that's like I think the new to PS Now is like not the exciting thing to be selling because if you scroll down just a little bit, it's like all right, like you got Nier Automata, Undertale, Red Dead Redemption 2, Judgment, God of War, like I think almost the entire God of War series is on there. To me, again, it goes back to marketing, and they don't give a fuck. They have it just to have it, and they just don't know how to sell it. Like Fallout 4 and Injustice 2 are still on here and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I mean, you come down, collections, open worlds being led by Arkham Asylum, like they're showing that there.
Yeah. Don't play the you can play the Batman Arkham Asylum City. Don't play Arkham Origins on PS Now.
Okay, they got APB Reloaded too, by the way.
Because it is the PS3.
Wait, they don't have APB Reloaded on there.
Yeah, no way. I can download it. I can download APB Reloaded.
Why? That's a random ass game to have on that service. Good for them.
I mean, that's the whole thing with PlayStation. And whatever. We've gone into a different
games on Game Pass. You know, like I think again, there's more clear of like, hey, Xbox first party games are coming here. But
I think there's like more of a
in
story told.
Is a lot of like random fucking games that are like, all right, cool. It's just PlayStation's not nearly as consistent of committing to PlayStation Now, which is. Fine. They don't feel like they need to sell their first party games.
And to be fair, PS Plus has been filled with bangers this year, right? And part of what I'm asking is like, when I talk about the indie or third party games coming to Xbox Game Pass day and date, like your Back 4 Bloods, like your Artful Escapes, like your 12 Minutes and all that stuff. to be fair, PlayStation Plus has had those. PlayStation Plus has had Maquette. PlayStation Plus had Destruction All Stars. No matter how you feel about it, right? That was a new game coming out on that service. We got
Fall Guys last year.
They got Fall Guys last year. Even last month, there was the Battle Royale game that me and Mike liked a little bit. Hunter's Arena of Warfare or whatever it's called. Operation Tango, another good example, right? Like,
yeah, I
that
think
stuff is coming out on PS Plus instead of PS Now, which I get, but also, I don't know, like, it makes PS Now so much less exciting when there's nothing coming out day and date for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversation here, and like people always will, there always will be that sector of the audience that's like, oh, why? You know, I thought that's supposed to be about the love of PlayStation. It is, but part of that is like, I want to see y'all knock it out on every level. And the truth is, that's never going to happen because it's a company and places have flaws, people have flaws. No one's ever perfect, but when we're having these conversations on like what we want, the good, the bad, like that's always going to be part of it. And I do think I love the shout out to PS Plus because it is probably my most used between that and like Gold. Like I find the games that drop on PS Plus to be some of the most appealing ones. Over in the chat, someone mentioned that there was a PlayStation blog about some indies coming day and date to PlayStation Now. So maybe that could be an angle for them.
Right?
Yeah. So
I'm very curious about.
Someone also asked if we're going to talk about Jet. No, I'm not gonna.
I didn't know that.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you can go back to the preview of Jet. That very clearly acted as the review of Jet.
I saw what I needed to see.
Wait, is Jet on PS Now?
No.
That would be cool. I don't think it is.
No, I think they're just asking if we're going to talk about it on the show.
It's the embargo lifted today, I think.
No, the preview embargo. You can go back and find our Jet preview alongside our Deathloop preview. One thing, I read GameSpot's review where they gave it a 5 out of 10, and I was like, yep, I agree with this review. This is exactly where I was.
All I'm going to say, Blessing, PlayStation Now has got Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic CD, Sonic Forces, Sonic Generations, Sonic Mania, Sonic the Fighters, whatever the fuck that is, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, Sonic Unleashed.
We're gonna do a hashtag
PS PlayStation pick.
We're gonna do a hashtag PS Plays and talk about PS Now.
Let's do that.
Now it's time for PlayStation Picks. Of course, this is where you highlight a few of the cool-looking games coming to PSN this week. The big hitters this week, of course, you're getting Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl on PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday, October 5th. You're getting Alan Wake Remastered for PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday. Hell Let Loose is coming out on PS5. That is the PS Plus game for this month. Speaking of games coming day and date to PS Plus, that is coming Tuesday, October 5th. Jet the Far Shore is coming to PS5 and PS4 Tuesday, October 5th. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is coming to PS5 and PS4 Tuesday, October 5th. Very big Tuesday. And then Far Cry 6, of course, is coming to PS5 and PS4 on Thursday, October 7th. We have just one pick for you. It is a game called BPM Bullets Per Minute. That's coming to PS4 on Tuesday, October 5th. BPM is a rhythm action FPS roguelike where you must shoot, jump, and dodge to the beat of an epic rock soundtrack. Delve into a randomly generated dungeon where one missed note can lead to your death. Gain game-changing abilities and loot powerful weaponry to defeat your ancient enemy. And this is one that I've actually been looking forward to for a while, and I played a little bit of this already on PlayStation. And before I say anything else, I'm going to look up the embargo to make sure I can talk about this right now. But yeah, Greg, does this do anything for you? Are you liking how this looks?
It looks interesting, yeah. Like I don't know if it would vibe for me, but I like the look of it. I like the idea of it, right? No.
I was okay until the roguelike dungeons.
See, that's what gets me like,
I can't be like, I can't live that life. I got to break that barrier though. Like I need to find the game that's going to get me over that like rogue problem that I have, but I don't know. I guess this could theoretically be the one, but it's so difficult.
Yeah, I don't see it. There's nothing in my embargo. There's like no embargo. I don't think that can't be right. Hold on, let me look this up.
What happens? What are they gonna do? Ruin your career? No big deal.
That's a good point.
Here, how about this? I'm gonna transition to what you playing. Because what you've been playing, you could, if you could say you've been playing that and give me some impressions of it. And if you can't, no big deal.
Perfect.
So I'm going to start off, and I think Janet's in the same boat as me. I've been playing a lot of Far Cry 6, and that's all I can say. We can say we've been playing Far Cry 6. Review will be on the KindaFunny Gamescast this week. Jan, are you coming?
I don't know why I typed it in. You're like, I think we
you're very litigious. You want it on the notes as you go.
I'm like, oh my god, that's so stupid. Yes, that's my comment. I've been playing.
You should come on the Gamescast with me in the team.
I'd love to.
Okay, cool. You see the calendar, but let's make sure we get you in there about that. But yeah, can't tell you any impressions of it. I guess actually the first part you could, but it's the same part I previewed. But whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a review coming this week. Don't worry about it.
Oh, rewatch that while you're watching the Jet part of the preview. Just watch that whole.
Watch the Far Cry one too. Yeah,
just do all the previews. Just make a day out of it.
And so obviously Far Cry, a big old open world game's taking up a lot of my time. So I've gotten to get a few hours in with each of Life is Strange, Wavelengths, and then Alan Wake. And neither have been completed. Alan Wake is an interesting one. Alan Wake I had played originally on the 360 back in the day. I was obviously at IGN when that dropped, and it was a huge deal, and people really dug it. And I remember at the time, even though I loved horror at the time, I didn't vibe with it, and I bounced. This time around, booting it up, it's obviously beautiful. It's this remaster. Obviously, you still have it's beautiful textures on an older game. So Alan Wake walks and runs like an idiot. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? But the story and the delivery and the mystery of that game are still there. The gameplay still doesn't sing to me. This whole idea, I don't know how much you guys remember of it or have played of it, even of you're in a nightmare pretty much, or are you? And these guys come at you with this evil smoky shadow wrapped on them, and so you have to use your flashlight on them. That'll chase that away, and once that chases away, you can shoot them. You're constantly running out of flashlight batteries, so you have to be using it sparingly and run it. And it's I love the vibe of Alan Wake, and I love the delivery of the story as well, because the story is delivered. Alan Wake is an author. Spoilers, not really. This is the whole premise of the game. One of his stories he was getting ready to noodle around on is becoming real with him in it. And so, he narrates it as if he's reading his book, which I really fucking dig. I think that's a really cool way to do it. But just that moment-to-moment gameplay, I'm like, meh. I gotta get back to this. I think it's so annoying, the whole battery business of all right, well, but then I gotta remind myself, I think IGN's review does a great job of saying today, it is a game that looks new, but then you start playing it, you're like, oh yes, this is a throwback to an older game and what it was. And so it is this idea of it's the survival horror of do I want to engage with you or run or get the battery and do the thing? And then with a giant embargo for Far Cry and then Wavelengths and all this other stuff, I was not loving my time with this right now. Not hating it either. Is something I want to get back to and see all the way through, but we'll see if my life lets me do that. I put it down and walked away to then pop back into Life is Strange Wavelengths. If you're not familiar with Life is Strange Wavelengths, this is a prequel DLC that's included with the deluxe edition of the game. It's Steph's story. So if you've played Life is Strange True Colors, which Janet and I definitely think you should, all right? Game of the year, am I right, Janet?
Wait, you should hold on, what?
Do you think it's your game of the year, Bear?
This is one of my game of the. It's one of my game of the years.
I said it was
you one of the game of the years. Again,
I was actually on the
lack of commitment on this show.
I was actually here for the spoiler cast, and I
is it your game of the year, Bear?
No, but I recommended it.
Then I want you to sit down and turn off your microphone.
It's not my game of the year either.
I was gonna say Deathloop is Jana's game of the year.
What happened? What changed it over for you?
What, me?
Yeah, was it? What did we?
It was her game of the year.
It was never my game of the year. It was number 2. I think
you have her confused with me, Greg. I know you're getting old.
No, you never debated. You were Deathloop. You said.
Blessing, you be dropping game of the year. Everybody's your game of the year. I'm probably freaking game of the year.
I have 3 games that are competing, and it's hard. Listen, it's not a games aren't a binary.
And Jeff Keighley's thing. Okay.
There are different reasons I love all these games.
12 minutes for Blessing, and then also The Artful Escape, and then this game right here,
and then Death of Parshore. Yeah. I love Life is Strange. I recommend everybody play it. But how's Wavelengths? Because I really want to try it out.
We all love it. We all say it's a ring endorsement. You should all go see it and do it. And then you should go back and watch that fucking Let's Play or the spoiler cast. Because I'll tell you what, I don't give a shit. But I knew as soon as I titled it Life is Strange True Color Spoiler Cast, I'm like, well, this is View's kryptonite. And sure as shit it was. People were like, oh, I'm not going to check. I'm like, there's an hour of a regular PS I Love You. Watch all that and then get there. People then are like, "Whoa, you're fucking clickbait headlines." I'm like, "Well, this was a headline that was true to our heart and soul, and you people spat in our faces." I digress. Wavelengths prequeled all that. Steph is the woman who works at the radio show, or no, I'm sorry, the radio station and the record shop. You can romance her if you want to. Yada yada. She's also from Before the Storm, which, as I had said in our True Colors thing, I'm like, I do not remember her at all in Before the Storm. Playing here and getting more of her D&D background and Mikey talking to her, I was like, oh, right, the picnic table. She was at the picnic table. I remember all this now. Wavelengths. Janet, have you tried it yet?
No, not yet. I do want to play it, though. I'm planning on playing this week.
It definitely doesn't hit nearly as hard as True Colors, which you'd expect, obviously, if they're going to do some kind of thing. But
Colors
shine. Set entirely so far, at least.
I'm so confused.
Unless there's some dramatic change coming, set entirely in the record store.
Go back and watch the show. You're the reason the views are
help us out, Bless. You know what I mean? Go on vacation.
Just tap into it and walk away. It still counts.
Garrett, me and you, let's play Wavelengths over the October.
Yeah,
when
we'll
Greg's
do our
on,
own spoiler cast.
And we'll do our own spoiler cast. This is Spike.
You're doing a spoiler cast with me later this week.
Oh, that's actually true. Oh, I should play Wavelengths.
Also, I was on the spoiler
I was going to
cast
mention, but
last week, so it's
Anyways, Wavelengths in the radio station. It's inside the record store, and it seems it's super isolating. where I think Life is Strange True Colors, what I love about it is, of course, the community of Haven Springs, right? And the way you talk to each other and the way you interact and stuff. In this one, you are still interacting. Like there's phone calls with characters. You are, one of the big things about it, of course, Steph, a lesbian, she's using like Tinder, but not Tinder, as an app to try to find people in the area to date and stuff like that, and having those kind of conversations through text. And so I think the isolation is on purpose. It is obviously, trying to make you feel as isolated as Steph does as you play through this whole thing. But it's also then this weird one of like no one comes in the record store at all, which is like isolating on another level that's interesting. And like we're jumping around time periods of her getting there and then major moments that have come up and stuff. And some of it is just like, there's this weird thing of when you are in the radio show booth and you're running it, it's all first person. And like, so you're just, you look around and then you make the choices of interacting with what you do. And then like, you're taking some calls, you have to read ads, which is very
weird. They should have put it in VR.
Exactly. You have to read ads on the air, which is very weird, kind of funny, real life influencing this video game life. I'm like, okay, now I got to read this ad for, the cauldron or producers. Yeah. And so it's interesting, but it's that weird thing where I liked Steph as a side character and what she brought out in Alex's story. And so far in this story for it, I'm not like enraptured, which is not what I want out of a Life is Strange, right? I put it down and I'm kind of like, I need to get back to that and finish it eventually, but I'm not like on the edge of my seat. Now, granted, this is also the problem with the prequel of I'm not on my edge of my seat getting to it. But then in the same vein of all that, I have seen people who online, right, who are gay and have, struggled to not only come out, but then date in different small towns, yada, yada. They're connecting with it really hard. So it might just be a game that isn't for me and kind of thing in terms of a narrative structure. I'm not the target audience, which is totally fine for it. But in terms of like, oh my God, did you play this? You have to play this. Let's do a spoiler cast for it. I'm not having that vibe with it at all. And I'm sorry, Janet, what was that?
Oh, how long is it? I don't know if you finished it yet, but
I haven't. How long the beat puts it at like either 2.5 or 3, a little over 3. And so I feel like I'm in the final section right now, but I was just very tie last night and started falling asleep. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to power through to do this, especially when I was like, I'm not like vibing with it. Like it's not like I'm falling asleep because I'm exhausted. I'm falling asleep because I'm not really feeling this, and I have to wake up early to play more Far Cry to try to hit Far Cry's embargo.
Like the way Far Cry is, well, I'm saying for Gamescast, but like, oh my gosh, whenever you have a beefy game, it just takes so much longer than you ever think it is going to. But I'm excited to check it out. I'm not shocked that you have that read because I think it's just such a small slice. Like, and that's kind of what was so great about this one, right? It was released all at once. We didn't have to wait, like, because when you go episode to episode, like some might feel weak, some might feel strong. It's always a little bit not fully the same because they're meant to be in conversation with each other. So it doesn't shock me that a one episode standalone won't be as good as the main game. Yeah. But
especially when you're a different character and probably a way more limited time to tell a story and you're trying to do a different thing with the first person. Like I can easily see that. I can easily see myself picking it up and having the same feeling of, oh yeah, I was invested in the Alex Chen story. In fact, it took me until like maybe episode or chapter 2 or 3 before I was fully invested, right? And this is a single chapter thing, and so I'm gonna try it out because some of the things you mentioned I think speaks to me. I like the idea of one, like running a show and doing ads and all that stuff, just because I think that hits close. But then also being like isolated and like you mentioned dating apps and all that stuff, like all that stuff speaks to me pretty well. And
sure.
Sounds exciting.
Blessing, did you figure out? Can you talk about BPM?
I did figure it out. I cannot talk about BPM.
Close one.
It's a good thing you figured it out.
Caught myself there. I will say the game is out. The game's been out on Steam, and so like I'll talk about what it is, just not my feelings on playing it on PlayStation. Sure. But like it's what the description is, right? It's a first person shooter roguelite where you are dungeon crawling, similar to something like a Hades or any other roguelite that you played. But the twist is that you have to shoot your gun to the beat. And like that always kind of spoke to me in terms of it being a rhythm game and a roguelike, because I like both those things very well. Apprehensive about like how those things might meet, but like it's one that I wanted to try for those reasons, just to see how it works. And so like, tune in later, probably for my actual full impressions on BPM. But I can say that I have finished a game called Prey, which I don't think I've gotten to talk about on any of the shows because I went on vacation after I started playing it. But like I started playing Prey after I beat Deathloop, and people hit me up on Twitter and were like, "Hey, you should check out Prey Moon Crash because it's a roguelite, it's arcane." I'd never tried out Prey because specifically like it didn't get the best reviews when it came out, and also it was very much horror, and it seemed like a different thing from Dishonored and all this stuff, and it just didn't really speak to me that much. Seeing the reception and seeing the trailers and all that. After having people sell it to me online, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try it out. And I guess I did talk about it because I talked about how I bought it on PS5, started up, and I was like, oh, this this frame rate is not great and all this stuff. And so I ended up switching to Xbox to play the rest of it because of FPS boost and Game Pass and all that. But I've finished it now. I absolutely adore this game. I was enraptured, no pun intended, because this game is very BioShock. I was enraptured with the experience of playing this game. It is all the things that I love, and I think we all loved about Deathloop in terms of it being an immersive sim, and there's a lot of stealth elements and playing your own way and leveling up your own way. It has all that stuff that you appreciate from both Deathloop and Dishonored. But in the spectrum of arcane games of being, I think Deathloop being the most mainstream and Dishonored kind of being like a notch less mainstream than something like Deathloop, I would say Prey strikes me as maybe their more hardcore title in terms of it being punishing. Because I died so much playing this game, way more than in Deathloop. Because one of my things with Deathloop was that game felt too easy at points. Prey is the opposite. Prey, I died all the time. I always felt so weak. I felt like I always had to fight for my next neuromod, which is the upgrade system in this game. You put neuromods into whatever your upgrade tree is. Always felt like I had to fight for the next one. And I remember Janet asking on one of the previous episodes about how scary it was. And I think the thing I said is that, like, oh yeah, in the beginning you have the mimics and the mimics turn into objects in the world, and always found that to be scary. But I figured that would fade away after a little bit, and that never faded away.
No, it never does.
I was terrified. I was terrified throughout the whole thing. And I think the one of the reasons why is because they do a good job of introducing enemies throughout the game, because most of the enemies are mimics and what they call phantoms, which are like humanoid looking mimics that are a bit bulkier, and they have different elements attached to them. And so you might have a regular phantom, or you might have a fucking like lightning phantom that shoots lightning electricity, or you might have a thermal phantom that is more fire element. And so you have that stuff. But then you also have the Nightmare, which is this gigantic enemy that is the scariest thing in the game. I hated it so much. That just appears random places. It's like Mr. X, where it's kind of always on the hunt for you. And so you will enter a room, and you'll see the Nightmare, and you'll have a countdown timer that's like, the Nightmare is hunting you for the next 3 minutes, and you kind of have to hide from it or kill it. And I hated that thing. I did not like the Nightmare. Bear's showing it right now if you're watching the video version. And yeah, it's just a gigantic fucking phantom looking thing that's always on the hunt for you, and it's super stressful. I did not like that, but I did love the game. Like, I think the story stuff as well.
I forgot about this. Oh my god.
Yeah, look at it. I fucking hate that thing.
I
had to kill it once.
Game. I love Arcane so much, but I can't let you do this to me. I can't let. No.
I had to kill it one time because it kept spawning in my way, and I kept dying, and it kept like respawning in a direction I had to go to, and so I legitimately was hollering as I was shotgunning this thing in the face. I was like, "Oh Jesus! Oh fucking die!" It was that kind of thing. But yeah, like the story of it, I thought was super cool, right? For those who aren't familiar with what the narrative is in Prey, like obviously you're in a space station and you're exploring it and doing all these things and trying to get to the bottom of what's happening. But the game presents you with a choice toward the beginning of the game, and you're gonna have to make that choice later on toward the end of the game. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of who can I trust?
I'm looking at the
video. Yeah, there's a lot of who can I trust? What can I trust? You know, like, do I want to do X thing? Do I want to do Y thing? And I love the amount of choice they give you in this game as well, both in the narrative and in the gameplay. But I had a really good time with Prey. It is now my other favorite arcane game alongside Deathloop. You know, I ended up liking it even more than Dishonored, and I love Dishonored too. But I just had a fantastic time with Prey, and I plan to start Moon Crash, which is the roguelite DLC, which is the reason I played it.
The whole reason you started this to begin with.
Yeah, I plan to play it hopefully soon, maybe this week. But Prey is fantastic. I forgot if I ever asked you guys if you played. I know Barrett played a little bit of it.
I have not.
I started it, and I forget why it was at launch. I love that opening. I had done a preview event on it that told me did the opening obviously again to start the game, and then the more I played it, I forget why I drifted, but when you went back to it being like, you know, it's more hardcore or whatever, like that was my takeaway from my short, I don't know, let's say I did 3 hours, maybe more with it, maybe less. And I remember being like, man, this is a video game, ass video game. like where it was like there was
Mhm.
so much information given to you, both in like, you know, just the terminals, right? Like I think I talk about Deathloop, and
Yep.
you know, we all praised them, right? Of like you can open it up and you can do the Fallout thing where you read everything and be like, oh, there's a funny story, or you can open it, bounce, and then the key information is given to you down in your corner. I remember playing Prey and being like, reading them, leaving, and be like, wait, what? I didn't. What? Can we come back and read it again? Like, what the fuck's going on? Like,
it's so
what?
fascinating seeing the arcane DNA and the things that they did improve in Deathloop, because that's one of my major things is in Deathloop. I would often, if I see a long terminal or a long book or whatever, where I'm like, I don't feel like reading this, I would still tab over to it, pick it up, put it down, and then see the summary block
100%.
that they put for you. And that was such a smart innovation, because in Prey, I would still do that, where I would see an email or I would see a note on the floor, and I would pick it up, put it down, and I'm like, oh
Shit, I gotta read this.
yeah, I actually got to read this thing.
Every game needs the summary thing. That
yeah,
or like
it's so
even,
good.
I get that voice acting is like very expensive, and they might not, and also might not narratively make sense to like have someone reading the thing, or even have like the character is reading it aloud, because that would get really expensive. But I'm like, I don't know, I'll even turn on text to speech just for this thing. Like I can't
Narration.
read all this. Like I can't
have
do
a
it.
good-
Like it's too much.
They have a good mix, and it's a similar thing in Deathloop, where you know it is you're picking up notes, which are usually shorter because it's like sticky notes in Prey. You're picking up notes, you're picking up books, which are the longer ones. Then you have emails, and then you have audio logs. And I think they try to have enough variance to where it doesn't feel like you are constantly picking up the same thing to get the story. But it's still, because it is this Bioshocky kind of, you're alone for the most part. You're rarely seeing people. But we still want to feed you the narrative. They have to like find creative ways to do that. And yeah, I think Deathloop for sure, they figured it out in terms of summarizing that stuff. But I do wish it was they leaned a little bit more on the audio logs as opposed to like a lot of the book stuff, because I was like, I don't care about any of these books. I'm not reading these.
Janet, what about you? What have you been playing?
I finally finished Hitman 3.
Hey!
So yay, it was awesome. I was actually kind of shocked by it, in the sense that when I first started playing it back when it came out, which I think was like January or February, it's my first Hitman game ever. I do think it's a fine starting point. I was able to like figure it out okay, and I played on like normal difficulty, which is called like professional, I think, in Hitman. And when I first played it the first time, I was so terrible at it. I was like, I don't even think I can do this, y'all. Like, I'm trying so hard, but I keep getting caught. And then these firefights, y'all know I can't aim a gun, so I'm just like dying instantly. And then and a lot of like having beaten it, I'm like, oh, I totally understand the language of what this game is doing in the series, and the loop of like, okay, you have the different, you know, costumes, and you can, and basic stuff for anyone that's played Hitman, but not basic if you've never played Hitman, where you're kind of learning, oh, if I get caught while wearing this costume's now garbage, I got to pick a different one, or different ones will get you access to different areas, and thinking of all these like extra things that are easy if you've played before, but are new if you have never played. So starting that game off in the Dubai level, where it's like this massive map and everyone's armed, like that was very overwhelming for me, and I was able to get through it. And then I did the, you know, the the Knives Out level and all that, and that one was easier because it was like a lot smaller in scope, and like just a little way less people and like things to worry about. And then I put it down for months, and I finally got back to it like this past like couple weeks, and I was like, okay. And then everything was chill, like it was so much easier for me to play. I still made like a lot of like dumb choices and things, but like I was able to get through it. I don't know if it's because I learned the language of the game more. I don't know if it's because I've gamed like an insane amount of hours this year. I think I've played more games than I ever have in my life this year, which is crazy. So I don't know, maybe a combination of the two, but I really enjoyed it. One thing that kind of stood out to me was I was sort of shocked that it's like a little bit janky. Like it looks very beautiful and it's really well made, but there will be those like weird glitches that happen with like, and I think I talked about this before, like guns bouncing on the floor, and like that one NPC is just like walking into a wall. But like, well, the game's so fun that like none of that really matters, but it was something that sort of surprised me because I forgot that was part of it. But
I think part of that too is like all the scripting that goes on in those games, because all the NPCs kind of have their own thing that they're doing, and there are so many NPCs in any given level, especially a level like Dubai, that I imagine that it's so easy for like an NPC to get off script and then just start walking toward the wall or off a cliff or some shit.
Right, and you're just like, you know, you just ignore that, right? You keep playing, and it's all good. But I had a really great time with it. I feel like, you know, I think replay value gets tossed around a lot, but it really does with like the scoring system.
For sure.
Like, there's so many fun ways to like take enemies down or like kill enemies, and I had a great time like picking up the dumbest thing I could find and making that my weapon. I'm like, okay, I'm like, you know, I pick up a muffin. I'm like, all right, now I'm the muffin man. Like, frying pan, like you're knocking people out. You
Now
get like
the
key
Muffin
cards.
Man.
Yeah, like I was like, have you met the Muffin Man? Anyway, I was really into it. Like I put on some formal wear for like the end of my playthrough, which I will say the ending was like a little bit less mechanically interesting than I hoped it would be.
Yep.
I kind of get it because they're trying to progress, like get the end of the story out, but it was a lot less fun to play. It was probably the least fun area, which was a little bit disappointing because like it was the ending of the game.
We've been
but
theorizing that was like their
James Bond.
yeah, that was like their tryout to do a James Bond game, because that level doesn't feel like Hitman, and it feels like a James Bond level.
that's what a lot of I streamed I guess my entire playthrough, but like with like like a 6-month gap. But that's what people in chat were saying too, that it felt very James Bond with like how it ended and everything. But yeah, I loved it. I had a great time with it. I think it'll hang in there in my top 10. I'm reconfiguring my top 10 now of games of the year. And I'm playing Ratchet & Clank. I finally, because I'm doing like a to be continued thing where I'm trying to go back and like my favorite games from the year, I would like to have beaten all of them if possible. So I'm back on Ratchet & Clank. I'm about now 5 or 6 hours in. It's cool. I feel like I've already talked a lot about my opinions of that game. I'm hoping that I'll have, a more solid overview once I actually finish it. But one thing that stood out in a positive way to me was just how like beautifully acrobatic it gets when like there's so many enemies and waves on screen, and you're constantly like, you really can get into a bit of a flow state with that game, which I think does make it stand out in the franchise, where I think before it was sort of just more simplistic, like there was less going on the screen in terms of enemies, in terms of visuals. But here it's like, okay, I have that weird like dash thing, I'm like skating, I'm also like you pause for a second with the weapon wheel, you take out this weapon, you put out what is it, Mr. Fungi. It's like, okay, I'm gonna drop Mr. Fungi, then I'm gonna use the topiary sprinkler, there, pause, I'm gonna use my like giant ray, that takes a lot of charge, okay, now I'm gonna turn this way. And it has a lot of those fun strategies, and I really enjoyed that. And just the movement of Ratchet is just incredibly fluid, like the way you can kind of do these little spins and tricks. It's probably the most fun the gunplay has been in the franchise. But I still wish like I kind of have been bummed ever since like the melee combat in that game sort of went away, where you can still use your wrench, but like the wrench ain't gonna do nothing for you. Like you're just playing on hard mode with the wrench.
Last resort.
Yeah, so I kind of wish miss those OG days of where the wrench really had a lot more of a role. But super beautiful, excited to continue with it, enjoying seeing the personalities of like the new characters they have. But yeah, that's basically what I've played.
Those hover boots were such a good addition to that game. Like every time I think when you're describing combat and all the shit that's going on, the thing I keep thinking of in terms of like the actual things they did add to like how that game moves and flows. The hover boots were my favorite thing while fighting, just because like you feel like you can kind of go anywhere, you have more freedom. The fighting arenas feel a little bit more expanded, and like you have like hooks and shit that you can, or I guess they're not hooks, I guess you have the literal rifts that you pull through. It feels way more mobile than any Ratchet and Clank before it, which is the thing I always appreciate.
Fantastic. That's what we've been playing. Again, Far Cry 6 is what we've really been playing, me and Janet. You can hear about it on this week's Gamescast, wherever you get your podcasts, and youtube.com/kindafunnygames. Before we get out of here and into the post show, which you can get on patreon.com/kindafunnygames, let's close the thread on hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode. Seemingly weeks ago, we had done a PS I Love Photo Mode. Or remember, if you want to be a participant in this, you play the game we say to play, or the theme we say to theme, and then you go on Twitter and you share your screenshot from your PlayStation with the hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode. We come looking for them, and then we give you a new theme and a new winner. The winner this time, ladies and gentlemen, because I said I wanted Toem screenshots, of course, and I said, of course, Portillo is in this game, my dog. Go find me some good Toem ones. Jordan Rowan is the winner, like a Rowan Stone on Twitter, who puts this one, Porty and the Reporter, up.
Great name.
That's a great
one, and it's the shot of Porty, the shot of the character, and then this custom text of Porty and the Reporter. A lot of Portillo photos sent in, not this many that were this creative, so I had to give Jordan a shout out here for hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode. Blessing, you're up next. What's your pick?
I feel like I'm a little bit late on this, but I'm sure people will still send stuff in. I want to see some of those Kena Bridge of Spirits screenshots, because that is a beautiful looking game, and I'm sure the photo mode in there. I've seen some good shots already with the photo mode in there on Twitter and stuff, and so I'm sure people already have stuff that they've cooked up. I'm sure people will cook up stuff this week to send over. But yeah, Kena Bridge of Spirits is the one I'm going to ask for.
All right, that's your hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode request. Kena Bridge of Spirits. Get them on Twitter so Blessing can pick through them for next week. Because guess what? That's another episode of PS I Love You XOXO in the bank. Remember, you can go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames where you can write in to be part of the show. You can get the show ad free. You can be watching us record it live right now. You could go there to get the old post show we're about to do. But if you have no bucks to toss our way and support us, no big deal. YouTube.com/KindaFunnyGames, RoosterTeeth.com, and podcast services around the globe each and every Tuesday, 6 a.m., unless there's some kind of crazy ass embargo we're forgetting about. Janet, before we go, where can people keep up with you?
You can keep up with me on Twitter and on Twitch and everywhere on the internet under the handle GameOnysus. That's GameOnysus. And really quickly, I do want to plug, I'm doing a spoiler cast via the Min-Max show, Max Spoilers. It's going to be me, Blessing, Natalie, Taylor. We're going to be going in on Life is Strange True Colors. So it was, a bummer not to get to talk about that with Blessing last week, even though I think we had, a great conversation. So we're finally going to get to that. And I think we'll probably hit the Wavelengths DLC at the end too. So if you're eager to talk about that, it's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to do it.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Where can people get that?
Over on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/minmax. It'll be there via video, but if you are on the Patreon, you can also get the Max Spoilers podcast through podcast services. But our pillar show, the Min-Max show, is free for everyone all the time, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of PS I Love You XOXO. In case my child is born, then you don't see me for like 3 months. It's been my pleasure to serve you. Until next time, take care, everybody.